Here we go.
Really interesting guest. Let's bring him on. His name is, once again, Ahmed Fouad Alkhatib, and I'll have him tell you about his background. Mm-hmm. But he's a peace activist.
I would not describe Ahmed Fouad Alkhatib as a fucking peace activist.
Palestinian peace activist. Someone who I've been following for a while with great admiration. Because he kind of like...
Hezbollah was founded after the first the first invasion of Lebanon.
all this guy does... There he is. I'll let him speak for himself. Hello, Ahmed. How are you? Thanks for calling.
Yes, of course. Thanks for having me on.
Look at all the cool flags behind him. He's definitely a peace-loving guy, you know.
Hello.
I'm very grateful for the perspective that you've brought to this from the very beginning, because I think I'm, like you, I'm someone who's...
I'll just say here, Bad Empanada has talked a lot about this, but basically Ahmed Fouad Alkhatib works for something called the Atlantic Council, which is basically just a US government-funded think tank. This guy is basically sold out for considerable amounts of money. It is not like an unbiased organisation. It is literally just an organisation which promotes Israeli propaganda. Bad Empanada's brilliant video is really brilliant about it.
Peace, who's in favour of Palestinian liberation.
Citing Bad Empanada. Yeah, Bad Empanada's videos about this are really fucking good. You can watch them.
Who hates Hamas, right? But also doesn't think that like it's a good idea to erase it. You know, the genocidal language that they deploy, that the co-signing the violence that you're seeing now, and it's like anyone who's isn't black and white just gets absolutely, you know, annihilated in the court of public opinion these days. Has that been your experience?
Absolutely, man. As someone from Gaza, someone who's lost family members, someone who has actual war injuries from having grown up in the Gaza Strip, the fact that I'm able to, and people talk about nuance, but no one actually walks the talk. No one actually understands what nuance means. No one wants to hold multiple truths. No one wants to talk about the fact that you can be pro the Palestinian people's just and urgent aspirations. Well,
by the way, also, I'll just pull up another thing. Anyone who promotes the Abraham Accords is not someone who is interested in peace. Anyone who promotes the Abraham Accords. The Abraham Accords are a load of bullshit, and they kind of date back to diplomacy from the 1970s under Jimmy Carter. They are just like the Camp David Accords. They are a means to move towards peace without actually including the Palestinians. They are not discussing, you know, the most important things, Palestinians' fundamental human rights, the rights of return, or anything like this. They are just an utter bullshit thing that will not even bring about peace. They are just so certain states can get more money from the US and actually move towards getting rid of the Palestinian cause so they can just do more business with Israel.
Also rejecting an Islamist death cult. That
Hamas are not an Islamist death cult. This is ridiculous language. Would this guy feel comfortable if I referred to Israel as if I said the inverse about Israel and Zionism?
Has been a complete disaster for the Palestinian people, far more than it has been a deadly menace for the Israelis. Yes, of course, It has been for Israelis in the 1990s during the Oslo process, in the 2000s with the Second Intifada, certainly with the rockets when they took over, and then October 7th. But I would argue that Hamas has been a far more menacing threat to the very existence and welfare of the Palestinian people, and trying to hold those multiple truths immediately erases.
The most important thing about the Abraham Accords is that they ended like the three no's, like no negotiation with Israel until there's an actual Palestinian state, towards basically nothing.
My heritage, my pride of my Palestinian background, I'm a spy, I'm a Zionist, I'm a traitor, I'm a sellout, I'm a bootlicker, I'm all of those things. And I've appreciated the fact that you, among other allies across...
But I'll pull this up because it's quite significant. Here is this guy saying Gaza is the only war in modern history in which people insist on having a civilian population remain trapped in a war zone, and any attempt to get them out of harm's way is met with condemnation, all while refusing to call out the evil terror organization that started the war. That is not a pro-Palestinian perspective. That is a perspective justifying the expulsion from Palestinian land. The reason that Palestinians won't leave is because they haven't been allowed to return. Anyone from Gaza would tell you that this is an acutely important thing amongst Palestinians. In fact, I know people who are from Gaza and still live there who say, hey, a lot of people made very difficult choices about moving towards the south because they were from a generation whose grandparents, or perhaps even people still alive, would say, you know what, actually, we don't want to move south because moving south is towards death. It is what was done during the Nakba, you know.
Across both the Jewish community and non-Jewish community have really been seeking to bolster those of us who are trying our best to be pragmatic, be moderate, be reasonable.
There is nothing pragmatic or moderate about supporting the UAE. Hold on, let's see what this guy actually says about the UAE. Also, what? How are you working for some fucking US government funded fucking organization? And you're just posting shit like this. His conversations, like, just fix it, man. Come on. Fucking Ahmed, he's not even good at his fucking job. I recently returned to Washington from a week in the UAE, where I joined a major conference and met with senior Arab, Israeli and US officials to discuss Gaza, Hamas and regional action steps. Discussions were frank and transparent. There's a clear vision, blah, 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 blah. I shared long ignored Gazan perspectives with policymakers eager to hear alternatives to the tiled, harmful resistance narrative. The resistance narrative is a much bigger thing than actually resistance also includes non-violent resistance, remaining steadfast in your land. The resistance narrative is not tired. The resistance narrative is all there is against a genocidal settler colony trying to remove all of the indigenous people from the land, or offering them no ability to exercise their rights or their existence as a Palestinian. And by the way, anyone who's claiming that they're like moderate, that they're this or that, and they're happy to go to the United Arab Emirates, yeah, it's bullshit. It's utter bullshit. Because the UAE, right, the United Arab Emirates, is a country that is complicit in genocide. There is no way that you can reconcile that with, like, this moderate, awesome opinion.
Be about our people's rights without promoting terrorism, which is very sexy nowadays among some in the circles, which is despicable.
You know, one thing that after October 7th that really shook me, was completely unexpected, was the outward support for Hamas, like immediately after. Because like I always had this understanding, like, oh, everybody knows they're like evil and they're bad guys and they're terrorists, right?
Everyone knows they're evil, they're bad guys and they're terrorists. Like, what is this? Like, literally, the American, like, Jimmy Carter is not like some fucking amazing liberal hero of Palestine. And if you want to learn more about this, I will once again recommend this. I am going to reread it because I've not read it in 5 years and it's really, really well written. But basically, it talks about how the Camp David Accords are often framed as like this, oh, Carter did so much for peace. But the reality of it was quite different. And it actually moved towards the crisis and the situation that we're in today. Like, obviously, he wrote it pre-October the 7th. But yeah, like, this whole idea of, like, what he's saying, it's just ridiculous, you know. This idea that oh, sorry, Jimmy Carter. Carter says, oh my fucking God. Oh my God. I need to close this article because it is killing my PC because it's the fucking Times of Israel or something. These articles just destroy my PC. But Carter said Hamas were more committed to peace than Netanyahu was. But these are evil terrorists? Okay, right.
But then after October 7th, I had my co-host Hassan Piker. I came on here to be like, dude, isn't this crazy? And he's unable to say a bad thing about them. The audience is seems to be in full support of Hamas. And I didn't even consider that.
It's just not true that people are in full support of Hamas. What people are in full support of is, like, some kind of genuine peace or something.
A possibility. I was, like, completely reality shattering for me when I saw that. And it's, you know, continued since then. It's really something, you know.
Well, you just hit on basically why I decided to put myself forth. I worked for an international philanthropic organization and research organization focused on Africa. Before October 7th for the last 8 years. And you know, I've maintained my contact.
So you worked for an organization focused on Africa, yet you went to the United Arab Emirates to basically go and talk with the people who are allegedly the moderate peace activists for Palestine, but they're the people funding and fueling genocide in Sudan?
Contact with Gaza ever since I came here, and we can get into elements of my story later. But while I've been on and off involved with what you would call the mainstream pro-Palestine movement, I had stepped away. But I was shocked myself that in the past, at least, there was the pretense, and I'll be honest.
What he really realized was there was a fucking ton of money.
Honest with you, like, there was the pretense, a goodwill effort, or at least a recognition of saying, well, I'm not down with Hamas, but the blockade. Well, I'm not down with Hamas, but Israeli policies. Well, no, I'm with the Palestinian people. I don't support Hamas, or and there were tiers of that, right? Mm-hmm. And then on October 7th, I would say something flipped, something really shifted. But I want to share, though, before October 7th, going way back, there were elements of supporters for Hamas throughout the movement, but it was generally understood.
They had to keep it low key.
Precisely, keep it low key, and they were genuinely I believed the smaller elements. So, for example, in the first war, I was, I'm 35 right now. I was 18 in 2008, 2009. I remember, and I was always, very good in like public talking, and I was always making, compelling case for why what's happening in Gaza is unjust, etc. I remember vividly in San Francisco, a reporter asking me, well, what do you think about these rockets that Hamas is shooting? They're indiscriminate, they're terrible. And I remember answering the reporter, of course I'm against Hamas's rockets, and I'm against random acts of violence. And that's not what the Palestinian people want, because Gazans don't want Hamas. And even back then, they didn't want these unmasked dudes. They just show up next to your house, they put up this launching pad, silly launching pad, they shoot off the missile, and then Israeli aircraft come and just like destroy the whole area. And so
it's also just not true. Like, why Israel has destroyed Palestine is over and over again because they don't want Palestinians to, live freely, basically. They do it as basically a message towards Palestinians that you shouldn't be anywhere near the resistance, that you shouldn't support resistance, because if you do, you are going to be punished. You are going to be punished and you will die. Israel openly states this in the Dahiyya doctrine of, like, massively disproportionate destruction. And it's very clear since October the 7th that this has been the case.
That was like when I was growing up, man. But when I was growing up in Gaza, it wasn't the rockets. They used to have mortars in there, and people hated when Hamas or Islamic Jihad.
It's gotta be terrifying when they set that up next to your house or wherever.
There's also mixed opinions about Hamas. Some people don't like them. Some people do like them. No one says that they're like loved universally by every single person there. This person just reflects a different opinion that is basically pro-Israel.
Where you live?
Exactly. So like. It was a universally loathed thing, and people were like, so what? Like, what are you going to do? And then meanwhile, Israeli surveillance drones are overhead, the Apaches, the F-16s. So, like, through my lived experience, through my contact with people in Gaza, through my...
Yeah, 100%. That's why he's doing it. He's doing it to justify destruction of Palestinian citizenship.
The understanding that since Hamas took over...
He literally tweeted about it. The Wall Street Journal obtained documents from within Gaza, which were verified by several Arab intelligence diplomatic organizations. The Islamist group was primarily concerned with sabotaging the prospect of Saudi-Israel normalization, which felt it would be a significant setback to itself and the Palestinian issue, despite promises by Saudi Arabia that Palestinian statehood would be preconditioned on normalization. Hamas's Sinwar and Sidia leadership did not trust Saudi promises and decided to activate attack plans that had been in the work for years. Before using Gaza, Hamas wanted to escalate violence in the West Bank and Jerusalem to torpedo Saudi-Israeli normalization. But when that failed, the Gaza Strip became the fulcrum of the terror organization's hopes that it could undo what at the time seemed like an inevitability. Interestingly, the documents also revealed that Hamas advertised a job position or possible positions to include grassroots organizing against normalization with Israel and to employ tactics of boycott of entities that were in support of normalizing with Israel. This is a massive and significant revelation that proves an incredibly disturbing fact about fact and reality. October the 7th was not about breaking the blockade, breaking out of the Gaza prison or concentration camp, responding to injustices in the West Bank, or seeking to promote Palestinian rights and statehood. It was a very specific and nefarious political action by a deadly terror organization to derail a political or a development that it felt was not advantageous to its objectives. This guy is a fucking idiot. This would be included in all of that, by the way. Like, Israel and the normalization and Saudi Arabia moving towards that without any guarantees around Palestine would be entrenching all of these things as acceptable and meaning that more of the Arab world or the Middle East had turned its back on the Palestinian people. Like, it's not a shocking political development, by the way. This has been posted over and over again, and it doesn't, the point he's trying to make doesn't really make sense in that exact context. The Abraham Accords are a ridiculous piece of legislation which served to push the Palestinian cause far, far down. The UAE was the first Gulf country. Its leadership framed the decision as a continuation of the UAE's long-standing policy of support, one that would bring them closer to statehood by halting Israeli annexation. How the fuck did it do that? It literally did the opposite. Like, Israel hasn't stopped at all. Like, this is what I mean. This is just a dog shit take. It's not congruent with actual reality. It's congruent with a fantasized vision in which Hamas and these radical jihadis are responsible for the issues of the Middle East that does not have congruency with an actual fucking material reality on the ground. Like, he's saying, oh, it wasn't about ending the blockade. Yeah, it fucking was, because the Palestine issue was sliding down, you know? And it's just ridiculous. This proves all Hamas's critics right. It's also very simple logic that this guy's saying. This proves that. It's written for fucking idiots. Incessantly excuse, the evidence is before you to realise your beloved resistance organisation is a fraud, that justifications for October the 7th that got October the 7th didn't get 60,000 Palestinians killed. By the way, I think I spoke about this recently. In Racecraft by the Field Sisters, they talk about how, the statement, which sounds unproblematic, that black people were segregated because of their skin colour, is problematic in the sense that black people were segregated because of white people's racism. People in Gaza were not killed because of October the 7th. They were exterminated by the Zionist project because they had no space for the Palestinian people. They did not want them to live independently, to have their own state. That is what Israel's fucking problem is with Palestinians. It has nothing to do with October the 7th. If you offer no peace, you escalate the annexation of the West Bank, dispossession, you push away the Palestinian issue. What do you think fucking happens? Israel has shown no interest towards any kind of peaceful, equitable solution. But a web of lies by ISIS-like jihadi organisation which is largely rejected by Palestinians in Gaza. It's a bit ridiculous, isn't it? The UAE tried to declare that it was something... Look, Mohammed bin Zayed championed the agreement, and by the way, I'd highly recommend Elham Fakro. She's great. Her work on the Gulf is brilliant. But yeah, the framing of the agreement as an advancement for Palestinians appeared congruous with the UAE's historic position on the matter. UAE's founder, Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, routinely urged greater support for the legitimate rights of the Palestinians, extended aid for reconstruction. In 2002, Palestinians in Gaza whose homes were destroyed by Israel or who had been bereaved or injured in the conflict, he funded, I completely missed that, this part, but he was basically just funding people, throwing money at it, but he doesn't really do anything to change it, you know? And he was fucking much better. But yeah, like, normalizing with Israel and pretending that this is like some major movement towards peace and saying like, oh, this is a really interesting development, when it had no, like, serious things for the Palestinians, shows you the poverty of this man's thought, you know? That tweet is ridiculous. Saudi selling the Palestinian cause is the end of Palestine. I mean, in a sense, perhaps it is, but I would say also Iran selling it would be major. But the Saudi cause have basically stood by whilst Israel did genocide, you know, and not threatened America in any sense.
In 2007, they accelerated the use of civilian areas for this action. So I was able, even as an 18-year-old, to say, well, yeah, of course I'm against these rockets. And the way Israel's conducting this,
right?
That and yada yada, I was immediately pulled to the side. I'll never forget this by one of the organizers of the someone who was at the time working through the Answer Coalition. The Answer Coalition have been around forever, and they were like, Ahmed, that was terrible. Don't ever do that again. You always pivot away from talking about Hamas and the rockets.
Hamas won a free and fair election. Gaza has been occupied. Gaza has been subject to a strict land, air, sea blockade since that point. Like, talking about what Palestinians feel is always mediated by the context of exactly what Israel has done to the Gaza Strip, you know?
Always make it about Israel. I was like, okay, wait, but I did talk about Israel, but I legitimately expressed a sentiment that I know people in Gaza and Gaza, like, I talk to my friends. No, it doesn't matter. You always stay on point. Keep the focus on Israel. Hamas is irrelevant in this whole. I was like, wait, but literally the conflict is happening because Hamas started all these things. Like, come on, guys. Like, so.
I also really love the story that this guy is sat here with 30 relatives who have been murdered, and they weren't murdered because of Hamas. They were murdered because Israel openly states that it wishes to expel the Palestinians. This is, by the way, what I said instantaneously after October the 7th. I said, yeah, Israel's doing genocide. They are moving towards expulsion of the Palestinian people. This is not normal. You could see this incredibly early on. His family were killed because of the fact that they, were killed because of the fact that they are Palestinians who live within Gaza. It's not Hamas's fault. It is the fault of the state of Israel. They fucking murdered them. And he still sits here and goes, yeah, Hamas do this with civilian infrastructure and do that. It's just fucking ridiculous. Israel murdered them because it wants to expel them. And also, I love this story. This guy couldn't get into Israel, even though he's a fucking propagandist for them. He got deported in 2017.
That was the first crack for me. I was like, really? We're going to engage in dishonesty just to be, but I didn't think much of it at the time. And I was like, okay, whatever, that's one person. And I continued to seek to do this pragmatic approach of saying, look, Hamas is like bad, like Hamas is terrible. And I would get some funny looks, but for the most part, people didn't really give me a hard time or push back. But what I would say is that since October 7th, there's been a complete shift, man.
Right.
And I have a couple of theories to that. I think one of them is that...
Because also, by the way, since October the 7th, it has become so unbelievably clear what Israel wants for Palestine. It began before October the 7th, and it began when the Zionist project came there. When the Zionist project came there. Expelling the Palestinian people has always been the goal. Why do you think they settle land in the West Bank? They don't just settle land in the West Bank because it's fun or they want a bit more land. They want to do that so there is no reasonable chance of any kind of Palestinian state,
I mean, it's been like, almost 10 years from October 7th since the last major war. And like, that's enough time for enough of the younger generations of Arab Americans, Palestinian Americans, the pro-Palestine, the Muslim Americans, the pro-Palestine movement writ large. So you have a new kind of wave of younger generations. But the other theory is that I actually think because of the success, and I'm putting that in quotes, success, it was horrible, it was a disaster, but the initial success of the attack of October 7th, I genuinely think that some people were like, oh, well, maybe armed resistance isn't so bad. Maybe it can work against a much more powerful adversary like Israel. Little did they know that, like, within 8 hours, like, the Israelis were starting to push back, and then the bombardment began. So, like, it was a complete failure. And then number 3, and this is where I get in the most trouble, because people start thinking that I'm somehow this, like, far right crazy. Like, I'm not. Like, I'm not far right. I'm not far left. Like, I'm a middle of the road. And me personally, honestly, I'm
anyone says this, you know what's happening.
I'm a Democrat. I'm a registered Democrat. So, but nevertheless, I actually think the pro-Palestine community and movement
I feel like telling people that you're a fucking registered Democrat when, the Democrats are the people who didn't do anything to stop your family being killed is a pretty fucking mad thing,
Plugged into a lot of the insanity of some of the extreme woke left. And I'm not saying woke left. I'm not saying that I'm coming from necessarily a MAGA perspective. I'm just saying that the broader environment, the 10 years since, the 2014 big war in Gaza versus 2023, almost 10 years later, things in the Western world, and particularly in the United States, are different, such that, we don't have critical race theory in Palestine. We have now critical Palestine theory. And that is,
what the fuck is this idiot even talking about?
The Palestinians have no agency. There's no accountability. What they did on October 7th was an inevitability, and that's why I call that the inevitability fraud. The October 7th.
October the 7th happened in the context of increasing annexation of Palestine. What is this? What is this critical race theory bringing these things up?
It was an inevitability when it wasn't. And so that's where I was really surprised that on day 2 or 3, there were these mass protests.
Right.
Effectively celebrating it, and at the same time calling it...
No, and anyone who does... By the way, this is just fucking Douglas Murray talking points. This is just like Douglas Murray talking points. The reason there were protests is because Israel started bombing the fuck out of Palestinians and killing considerable numbers of people. Almost fucking instantaneously. Almost instantaneously. Everyone knew it would happen because that is what Israel is like. Palestinians were being expelled on a much higher amount. There had been like 200 Palestinians killed in the West Bank that year. There had been constant pogroms, constant settler violence, and it's just ridiculous.
A genocide.
Right. Yeah. And so, what strikes me is the difference between what appears.
That's awesome, Anton. I hope you read them, and thank you for your kind donation.
To be the difference between what the people in Gaza actually want and advocate for, and then what Western leftists are being like, actually, no, you guys need to fight till you're all dead. Like, it strikes me as so deeply ironic. And like you said,
how can you speak for all Palestinians like this? And this isn't what Western leftists are saying. They're saying Palestinians should exist on their land with fucking dignity.
There's a bigotry of low expectations where it's like,
it's also just dog shit, this take.
Of course these people are going to act like barbarians. Of course they're going to want to be violent.
Act like barbarians.
Of course they're going to be like this. It's like, no, that doesn't, it doesn't, it's like, how little do you think of them?
Ethan Klein, try not to be racist when talking about Palestinians. Challenge level impossible.
You think that they have to act out in this way. Like, it's one thing to say, I understand why they're doing it.
Doesn't Ethan also say, well, the Israelis are always going to act like this. So what, are the Israelis? Is that a bigotry of low expectations? That Israelis always have to go fucking genocidal mania mode and blow up Palestinians? If you think that that's what has to happen after October the 7th, is that not, and you think it's a genocide, is that not bigotry of low expectations? That Israelis are only capable of genocide? That they can never say, hey, actually, something very substantial has to change here?
Doing it. I understand the mentality of how they got there and how they got radicalized. But this presumption that, like, of course, it's like you were saying, the inevitability of fraud, it's that. Of being like, of course they're going to have to, like, go slaughter a bunch of civilians. What do you expect? And it's like, that can't be true.
Precisely that, brother. And I mean,
he literally said that about he literally says that there is inevitability to Israel going and exterminating Palestinians.
I was on a YouTube show with a famous, European, let's not mention names. I don't like to mention names, but I was a famous economist. And he's like, he knows best because those Europeans, they're going to tell me as a Gazan what time it is. And he was like, well, of course the Palestinians in Gaza are going to act, his words verbatim, this is a quote, of course the Gazans are going to act like animals.
Yeah, he said that.
Yes, on live YouTube show. Of course they're going to act like animals on October 7th and like total barbarians because Israel made them into animals and barbarians. Israel made them into animals. I was like, okay, we need a little bit of a timeout, sir. First of all, that is incredibly racist. And then he got all worked up like, no, I'm not racist. The Israelis are the worst creatures and I was like, whoa. Excuse me, sir. First of all, the decision to launch October 7th was a decision. It was a choice. It was not an inevitability. It didn't have to happen. All of these Western, experts in academia make it seem like Gaza was starving, that Gazans were like a North Korea style famine.
So here is an article from 2015. Gaza could become unlivable in 5 years. So by 2020, here is a discussion saying the report highlights severe crises in Gaza related to water and electricity, as well as the destruction of vital infrastructure during the military operations in July and August of 2014. For example, it finds that 1.8 million inhabitants rely on coastal aquifers as their main source of fresh water, yet 95% of this water is not safe to drink. In addition to the 500,000 people who have been displaced as a result of the most recent military operation, the report estimates significant economic losses, including the destruction or severe damage of more than 20,000 Palestinian homes, 148 schools, and 15 hospitals. Serious damage was also inflicted on Gaza's sole power plant. The UN estimates that in 2014, unemployment in Gaza reached 44%, the highest level on record. In fact, the report shows that with negative economic growth, and by the way, I have pulled this up over and over again. You can read her work if you want to. Sarah Roy wrote about how the Israeli occupation, de-development Gaza. She wrote 2 articles and also a book as well. I think that this is the article. I'll just check whether it's free. It is a whole book. I've only read the 2 articles, but you can read it here. She probably talks about it in that. That's actually 2016, so it's probably not that. But she basically talks about how the Gaza economy was de-developed by the Israeli occupation. And here you have this guy who goes, oh, things in Gaza were great, you know, basically.
In 94, crawling on the floor.
You said, but this is what among my Israeli family members. We have no choice. How else could we have acted? You said, but this is what I saw among my Israeli family members. We have no choice. Like, it's unfair. No, exactly. I agree with what you're saying. Like, Ethan, it's always just one rule for what he says and then one rule for what everyone else says.
Or looking for crumbs of food, when in fact, this was a decision by Sinwar and Dave, 2 psychopaths underground, who not only didn't consult the rest of Gaza, they didn't even consult the rest of Hamas and the rest of Iran and the axis of resistance, Iran and Hezbollah, who had nebulous ideas about this happening, but basically he went into like total operational security mode and decided to do this on his own. My point is that this was a very narrow, specific operation against Saudi and Israeli normalization. This was a military coup within Hamas. Hamas's popularity was down in the toilet in Gaza before October 7th. So this was an attempt to rejuvenate the armed resistance narrative and fraud, but on behalf of which Hamas.
So what's the alternative? What's the fucking alternative? Like genuinely, what is the alternative that he wants to bring up? The armed resistance is fraud. Okay, what's the 2-state solution then? What's the fucking Abraham Accords? None of these things bring peace. Are these not fraud?
Siphon so many resources of the Palestinian people's resources. And again, I say this because my goal is, like, I'm not self-hating. I'm not self-flagellating. Like, I love my people. I'm proud of the people of Gaza. I think the people of Gaza, many of them, have incredible potential, incredible talent. Many people in Gaza, they ran successful businesses. There were beaches, there were hotels, Gaza had its first shopping malls during the blockade, okay? And by the way, yes, of course, Gaza also had some of the most polluted water and issues with that were the result of the blockade. But the blockade, people didn't understand the blockade. The blockade was not this stagnant regime. It was a system that evolved since 2006, and it went through multiple phases and stages. There were at times when it was as harsh and horrendous and inhumane as calculating the number of calories by the IDF that the people of Gaza needed.
So sorry, you just mentioned that they have the most polluted water, and that's because of the blockade. Like, what is this?
To survive. Oh, like at one point, John Kerry went into Gaza and he looked at the list of prohibited items, and it was like pasta and like Crayolas and stuff. And after a reassessment, especially after the 2014 war, there was a fundamental reassessment of the blockade regime where there was an effort by Kogat and by elements within the Israeli apparatus to try to let Gaza flourish from a business point of view.
But, like, also, by the way, this actually fucking happened in the West Bank, by the way. Loads of businesses proliferated in the West Bank after the signing of the Oslo Accords. They haven't done shit for Palestinians in the West Bank. There's incredibly high occupation. There's many struggles there, and they derive from Israeli fucking occupation and all of these things. And yet he's like going, well, you know, Gaza had shopping malls. Okay, yeah, but it had incredibly high poverty and also a considerable amount of, you know, fucking polluted water and all of these things. You can't ignore those.
To try to, and then later on they let the Qataris come in, and that's a whole other.
I mean, also you're right. There's also huge amounts of gas. Right, you keep recommending this Isle Weitzman book. I will actually read it because I've heard that it's brilliant, and I like Isle Weitzman's work. But yeah. Like I mean. You know, I mentioned a lot of this in my previous video. Like, I spoke about how, hey, the economic de-development happened before the blockade even fucking begun. It's like, you can, yes, there are businesses that exist within these places, but they don't service everyone. Of course, there are upper classes and such, you know, it's just ridiculous. It doesn't necessarily elevate the human suffering, which comes from an overarching blockade and genocide, like a long, slow process of refusing Palestinians to have their rights. Do you not think if you steal other people's land, that is maybe worth mentioning? That Gaza isn't some separate entity from the rest of Palestine? That Israel promised to link it with the West Bank during the Oslo Accords? That they fucking denied an election. I mentioned this previously. It's on page 115 of the paperback copy of The People Want. It says, Yasser Arafat demanded that Bush and Sharon let him hold an election, since he was certain he would win. They forced him to name Abbas as president of the Prime Minister. Saudi's willingness to hold elections is credited to Washington, blah, 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 blah. Basically, anyway, that's some other irrelevant stuff. But basically, Arafat wanted a fucking election. It was Israel that denied him having an election. And there's something I wanted to answer that. I remember the election of 2006. It happens under the shadow of the war in Iraq. Bush administration pressured Palestine Authority to hold election before anything, and the peace sorts of talks. Hamas won, blockade began. Exactly. How does it make sense to have a free and fair election and to basically deny Palestinians that result and enact a blockade? What's that?
Beast that we'll tackle in a little bit, with Netanyahu then using that as a way to keep the Palestinians divided and as political leverage. And that's where I think there needs to be accountability on the Israeli side for this 3D chess that backfired horribly. But the point is that I actually would argue up to October 7th, the blockade was at arguably its lowest point, whereby there were 20,000 people that were working in Israel, and that number was about to go to 50,000. My mom, I was regularly talking to her. My mom, when I came to the United States, I came here when I was 15, and none of my immediate or extended family came with me. I came by myself, and I was never able to go back in 2006 when Hamas abducted an Israeli soldier. And so I always had this like physical connection to the land. Through my dad ran an UNRWA, the UN refugee clinic.
Hold on, is that true? Many Palestinians also work illegally, but I don't know how many that actually was. I don't know if he's telling the truth. Yeah, like, look at this. It's just not true. There was 18,000. So I guess he said 20,000, right? But
agency, rather, that ended up becoming controversial during this war. He ran their clinic in Jabalia in northern Gaza. My brother ran their beach clinic. My oldest brother is in Gaza right now. He is the field director for one of the biggest medical NGOs there.
Sorry, the dog. we have a room full of dogs that just got spooked by something. Go on. Sorry, apologies.
Oh, no worries. My point is, October, like within the imbalance, this is what many commentators don't get. Within the imbalance of power dynamics, there's asymmetry of power between Palestinians and Israelis, with one side, the Israelis, clearly having overwhelming advantage. There is still, nevertheless, space within said imbalance for Palestinian agency and accountability and responsibility to optimize.
Right, here we go. Let's look at Human Rights Watch. Israel's sweeping restrictions on leaving Gaza deprive more than two... By the way, there's also so many other facets which I've spoken about previously. Like, Palestinians, right, who had illnesses, they were not allowed to leave and go and get treatment in other places, you know? Like, it's just ridiculous to act as if it was wonderful, you know? Between March, Human Rights Watch interviewed 20 Palestinians who sought to travel out of Gaza, either via the Israeli-run Erez or the Egyptian Minister Rafah crossing, wrote to Israeli and Egyptian authorities to solicit their perspectives on its findings, and separately to seek information about Egyptian travel company operates the Rafah crossing, but had no received responses. Blah, 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 blah. I just want to see if there's any information about specifically, like, the economic costs of it. Also, denying Palestinians the right to, like, move around freely and just live their lives. It's also a very violent and unjust and unfair thing. Acting as if it was, like, brilliant and lovely in Gaza is pretty fucking weird, you know? Like, people are still not allowed to leave, you know? People are still not allowed to move around freely. It's a very, very, very odd thing to sit there and say. I just want to see if there was, Look, Israeli authorities have also, for more than 2 decades, sharply restricted the use by Palestinians of Gaza's airspace and territorial things. They blocked the reopening of the airport. Like, what do you mean? It's ridiculous. Also, how can you separate Palestinians? I mentioned this a second ago. Acting as if it's wonderful when Palestinians are cut off from Palestinians in other spaces is kind of insane. It's kind of insane, you know? Via Rafah to the UAE for a job interview. He said on his travel date, Egyptian authorities turned him back, saying they had met their quota of travellers. It's just people talking about, like, the experience of being Palestinian. And it's hardly like, hey, this blockade's awesome and, like, life in Gaza is good, you know? Here you go. So this is from June 2022. Right, sorry. In June 2007, following the military blah 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 blah. So far in 2022, the Israeli authorities have approved only 64% of patients' requests. That means 36% of people who wanted specialized treatment were just denied. Like 36%. What? That's mad. It's mad to sit there. It's just mad to sit there and just act as if things were really good. The volume of truckloads entering Gaza in the first months of 2022, around 8,000 per month, was about 30% below the monthly average for the first half of 2007, before the blockade. Since then, the population has grown more than 50%. Israeli forces have restricted access to areas within 300 meters of the Gaza side of the perimeter fence. It was also one of the most densely populated areas without, like, you know, access to clean water, where many people suffered from severe disabilities after being attacked by, during the Gaza March of Return, the Great March of Return. They were denied all of these things to live in their land freely. And this guy just talks about it like they had dignity, like they had great lives. It's just like, how dare you speak like this? 1.3 million out of 2.1 million Palestinians in Gaza required food assistance. What kind of life is that to lead? Like, what? How dare you sit there and say, like, oh, you know, the blockade, it was like kind of good. There are regular power cuts in Gaza, in my understanding. Rolling power cuts averaged 11 hours per day. 78% of piped water in Gaza. What kind of life is that, man? What kind of fucking dignity is that? You piece of shit. You piece of shit. Saying that, like, oh, you know, it's actually quite good. You know what? Maybe if, you know, the American government sent me on one of their little fucking programs and I was getting a bit of money in, maybe I'd sell my soul if I was a moralless piece of shit like this. It's just no kind of life. Like, it's no kind of life. And someone just put, we had power cuts back in Vietnam. I understand that, and I think that should change. I think if people in the West are living opulent lives, if we're having wonderful times, and we have basically any amenity that we want, and a considerable amount of our wealth and our position within the world is the result of brutal exploitive historical colonialism, and now a system of racial capitalism. In fact, to take the case of Vietnam, many people in Vietnam, because Asians are seen as good workers, are basically still working in fucking sweatshops, making shitty garments to be sold in Western society. It's a horrifically exploitative world, and people deserve to live with fucking dignity everywhere around the world. And in the case of Gaza, sitting there and acting as if this is some wonderful fucking lovely space is just fucking insane. Like, these are reputable human rights organizations, you know? So I remember I was working at Middle East Eye and I had to do some stuff for this at the time. So this article is from 2023 and it's about fishermen's wives who were prepping food, turning into great meals. So it's like a nice heartwarming story. But just read this part. Since 2006, fishermen and farmers have been the workers most impacted by Israel's stranglehold on Gaza. The first file that the occupation deals with when they decide on restrictions in the Gaza Sea. They immediately limit the fishing zone from 12 to 6 or 3 nautical miles. In addition to this, there are daily incidents of detention, boat confiscation and assaults. Under the 1993 Oslo Accords agreed by Israel and the PLO, Israel is obligated to permit fishing up to 20 nautical miles off the Gaza coast. In practice, this has never been implemented. Like, what is this piece of shit talking about?
For better decision making, to optimize for better circumstances, so that you don't hand our people on a silver platter to the most far-right government in Israel's history, committing the worst single-day attack on the Jewish people.
They weren't handed to the most far-right government. The most far-right government escalated, provoked, offered no solution.
Since the Holocaust, on a government that has Smotrich, Ben-Gvir, and Netanyahu. Mm-hmm. And so that's where I speak with passion, and that to me is what's missing from the discourse. It's easy to go on endlessly attacking Israel to the moon and back. And you know what?
Is it easy? Because you can't fucking do it.
That suits you. That's for some people, that's their prerogative, though I feel like that's become kind of a trendy thing to do. But if you actually genuinely want to help the Palestinian people, if you want to learn from our past mistakes, if you want our people to learn from the repeated failures of 77 years since 1948, then it's time to look inward. And again, that's not...
why is it time to look inward, man? Like, Palestinians have never been offered a good deal by Israel. They made up the vast majority of inhabitants in that land, and they are the ones being expelled and just living in horrendous situations, you know?
Blaming the victim. I actually think that's the first step.
Settlers left greenhouses brought by donations. It was repaired after some disorder. When Gazans started to export produce, it was blocked, not allowed until all products spoiled. I mean, this kind of shit doesn't surprise me. In the West Bank, right, there are certain settlements that throw their wastewater onto Palestinian crops so it makes them inedible and they can't be sold at markets. Like, the levels of everyday, like, seemingly benign actions that are just so incredibly cruel towards Palestinians are fucking mad, you know.
Empowering the Palestinian people instead of all of these academics rushing to say, oh, y'all have no agency, no accountability, y'all are angels.
Agency is one of the most dogshit words currently always thrown around by idiots like this.
Whatever you do, you can't be blamed because it's all Israel's fault.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, there's seems to be a growing movement of people protesting Hamas at seemingly a risk.
God, Ethan fucking loves this.
A great risk to their own personal safety. I know.
This is Ethan. What have you been up to recently? You have been threatening people's safety by escalating a campaign of targeting against content creators on the internet because of their support for Palestine.
I read some of the protesters were executed and left like at the...
What does Israel do to protesters?
At his parents' house.
Banal, not benign, thank you.
Or something like that outside. Mm-hmm. But there seems to be a growing protest, and simultaneously there seems to be people like Hassan Piker and people like him who are simultaneously kind of discrediting them or trying to change their motives. He'll say like it's not that serious, or they're there to protest Israel primarily. They don't actually hate Hamas, or they're there because of...
They're there because they've been starved for fucking people in certain places have been starved for basically 2 years now, in especially northern Gaza. There's been a huge amount of starvation in spaces like this. And yet you are going, they just protest against Hamas. Well, you're ignoring a very important context of many people have had huge amounts of their family members exterminated, have been wounded, are suffering psychologically. There are, of course, these things. And there is, of course, anti-Hamas sentiment in the Gaza Strip. People have opinions. If you want to offer people genuine agency, don't just go, this is a real growing movement. There have always been differing opinions. And there are some people who are anti-Hamas. There are some people who protest against Israel's end to the genocide. But notice that these stories have been kept alive by a very small amount of people who are very often just fucking pro-Israel. In 2015, article with Netanyahu titled How the Small State of Israel is Becoming a High-Tech Superpower, Bibi talks about how natural gas was found trapped under seabed. Yeah, it was found in 2006. Thank you very much, Sarah, for your kind donation. Palestinians have never been allowed to exploit it. If Palestinians were allowed to exploit their gas and Israel lifted the blockade, linked up historic Palestine, offered them any kind of reasonable solution, there might be major changes. But Israel doesn't want it. Israel doesn't want major changes, you know?
Whatever. He thinks it's not a big deal. There's not a lot of people there. They're actually there to protest Israel primarily, and this is just propaganda. Again, it's like these leftist liberals, these Western leftists, I feel like they're clearly not helping.
What the fuck? Like, this is such a perverse thing to say. You are trying to deplatform the Western leftist who you make 30 plus fucking stories about, who is posting and has been advocating, who interviews Palestinian actual journalists instead of fucking idiots who are adjacent to the American government. Like, what the fuck?
And I don't understand. I just don't understand, you know? And like the way that they're now defending this shooter in DC, or not maybe defending, but excusing. A lot of people are defending. A lot of people are excusing.
Oh, a lot of people are outright defending him.
Yeah. And so it's like, and then I see Netanyahu giving these insane fucking speeches, or other government officials of Israel. And I'm like, I hate these people. And now these people are saying like the most heinous, insane shit that I never want to hear them saying. And it's like, it's making everything worse. It's giving these people a platform in Israel who are the worst. And it's giving just more justification for these so-called...
What do you mean it's giving Israel, these people, a platform who are the worst? The worst people in the world have had a platform in fucking Israel for years. Like, I mean, I will point you again to Adam Schatz's London Review of Books. He's reviewing A State at Any Cost. Like, the things here that you can read that Ben-Gurion is saying, there are no foreigners, 100% Jews. What happened in Jerusalem and happened in Haifa can happen in large parts of the country if we endure. Do you think someone who is gleefully expressing joy over the removal of the indigenous population is someone who you should be like, yeah, actually, you know, he was one of the best people being platformed? No! Violent settler colonial ideologies platform the most heinous fucks in the world.
Activists online who are cheering on more violence. It's just, I don't understand the point, and it just doesn't seem complicated to me. I don't know. I'm blackpilled on it.
Yeah. So I wanna say something just for the record. Like, I don't know Mr. Piker. I know of him through you explicitly. I am disappointed recently by the fact that he hosted a gentleman by the name of the Bad Empanada. The Bad Empanada has incited so heavily against me. Some of the worst death threats that I have received against my life came from people.
I saw Bad Empanada's video about this. He genuinely seems to have more ire against Bad Empanada than the state that killed his fucking family.
Directly affiliated.
Do you know how often I hear that?
Yeah.
And he did a whole hit piece on me, and for some reason he just dedicated.
It's really good, by the way, his video.
It's so much of his energy to me, and I was like, dude, just let it go, let it be. There was a hit piece on me by basically a leftist rag that's like a Russian, Iranian, North Korean propaganda outlet that claimed Israel is paying me $30 million to promote genocide, and of course, you know, Mr. Empanada just, and he called me the final boss of respectability politics. And, you know, again, and I'm speaking about this not in a
So this is the article that he's talking about. I just want to show you this. So he says, it's from this article, I'll show you this one actually, I'll just show you this one. Teaming up with billionaire mogul Scooter Brown to promote Sheryl Sandberg's film Screams Before Silence, Ahmed Fouad Alkhatib spoke at an LA screening. He stated that as a Gaza man, he wanted to keep the focus on the victims of October the 7th, specifically Israeli women. Alkhatib, an American citizen, blah, 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 blah. Sandberg's film has faced widespread condemnation. I mean, this is true. It is not a good piece of media. According to UN and human rights reports, Al-Khatib left Gaza at the age of 15 before the Israeli siege, uses his Gazan identity in his criticism despite his departure from Gaza. Like, that's pretty fucking weird to talk about the blockade when you have not lived under it, you know? You have not lived under it, you know? Presenting himself as a liberal human rights blah, 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 he published an article, the Free Press, entitled, Israel Killed 31 Members of My Family, the pro-Palestine. Oh, okay, should we just let Israel expel all the Palestinians then? Because that is what people are protesting about. What do you think? Western governments are fully behind what Israel is doing to people like your family. They can't even condemn it or stop it. They sell them the bombs, and yet you're talking about the pro-Palestine movement. That is a deranged belief. That is fucking deranged. In which he uses the story of his suffering family from Gaza City to lecture activists about why they should empathize with Israelis and Zionists. He tells a story of how he wanted to condemn Hamas, but was chastised for condemning rocket fire. Brilliant. Before becoming a non-resident senior fellow, he worked with the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, which John Mearsheimer and Stephen Walt described in their book, The Israel Lobby, as one of the lobby's most prominent propaganda fronts. I mean, it's not fucking surprising. It's a US government adjacent. The US government is currently run by a man who believes that Israel should be able to just annex Palestinian land, should be able to expel all Palestinians from that land. So yeah, I think that maybe something closely related to a government who has not done shit to help Palestinians in fucking 70, 80 years has continually allowed the most heinous acts to happen to them and has facilitated them and has betrayed them, especially in the case of Lebanon, is not like maybe a place you want to be working with, you know, the organisation which has gone round fucking up countries all over the world in its own interests and invaded Iraq largely because of oil. Like, it's insane. About interactions with Israeli soldiers who fought in Gaza seeming compromised in America after their return. He condemns Netanyahu, but advocates engaging with Zionists for peace with Israelis. In a 2017 piece, he recounted nearly being killed in an airstrike that killed my close friend. yet express compassion for Israelis and belief in peace. Accused of being a grifter, Fouad Alkhatib has always maintained a two-side stance, advocating for peace and reconciliation. He justifies this shift by saying, I was compelled to put myself out there after what I saw unfolding. I knew that Gaza, as we knew it, would cease to exist. I was also horrified by the dehumanization of the Israeli victims and the celebration of taking women and children hostage. You are on stream with someone who celebrates his wife's service in the IOF and says he's proud of it, an organisation which literally takes Palestinians and uses them as human shields.
Personalized sense, I've had way worse guys than Mr. Empanada come out. I've had Al-Qaeda guys straight up, and it's all here threatened to, which is weird because I'm single, I don't have kids, threatened to behead, to rape my children, behead my wife, and then rape me and behead me. And these are like people like Al-Qaeda.
Okay, like, great. I've had Zionists say that they're going to stab me. Like, what's your point?
They're like big Al-Qaeda guys coming after me to the point where I've had to acquire the means to defend myself. Wow. So this is not a pity party. I'm simply saying that, you know, having Mr. Hassan and the bad Empanada, two non-Palestinians, sitting up there pontificating about, you know, what is good for the Palestinians and genocide this and genocide that and resistance, how pompous can...
How are you dismissing it as genocide that? Your family... the government with which you work for has just proposed... the government with which you are aligned with has just proposed to expel your family. You say you love your people. They don't think your family has a right to live there. How are you fucking talking about reconciliation?
One get is that... But Mr. Piker, if he has any interest in actually engaging in this and actually like engaging in a goodwill conversation,
I would love that. I would love to see him talk to you. I don't think he will because it's too disruptive. But it's too disruptive to his message.
It's too disruptive. This guy is literally just a fucking idiot.
To the narrative.
Yeah.
I have personally been. I mean, I've come this close to disavowing the entirety. And this is something that as a radical pragmatist, you know, because I launched the Realign for Palestine, which is about radical pragmatism, a rejection of violence, multiple truths, different layers of engagement, dialogue, conversations, not as kumbaya, but actually as a pragmatic, meaningful way of establishing common ground. And I've come this, but despite the aforementioned, I've come this close to disavowing the entirety of the pro-Palestine movement as basically being a complete fraud. And I know people in it who are following me, who are trying their best, and I know there are good people in the movement. This is just the only thing that's out there, and I'm trying really hard to be compassionate. And what really, like the two things that have just made it so exceptionally difficult, never mind the attacks on me, calling me a Zionist, the constant threats. They go and harass me on college campuses when I speak and interrupt me and scream free Palestine at me. Imagine.
I'll debate him. He can come on my stream if he wants. This guy can literally just come on my stream if he wants. Like, I will debate him.
Free Palestine at a Palestinian from Gaza who literally runs a program called Realign for Palestine, who has family that was killed in Gaza, who is literally deaf in his left ear because of a bombing by the IDF. Like imagine just the stupidity of yelling
the
back.
Arrogance.
And the arrogance.
It's just,
so, sorry, I'm just...
hold on, let's see what they posted about Nakba Day. For 77 years, we've only looked back. This year, let's start by looking forward. Mourning and anger and grief aren't the end of our story. There are more pages left open to us. Chapters full of prosperity, of nation building, of hope. If you truly stand for Palestine, stand for a future worth living. For decades, Nakba Day has been mourning, a day to remember what was lost 77 years ago. The land, the homes, the lives, the identity. Our memory matters, but what we do with it matters even more. The story of the Nakba has been told by generations. We must keep retelling it, but more importantly, we must start thinking about what comes next. There are many people who are talking about this, and yes, you fucking can undo 1948. Yes, you can undo 1948. You can undo 1948 by letting Palestinians return to their homeland. You can let them return to their fucking homeland. But we can decide what 24... Reclaiming the narrative means refusing to remain frozen in grief. They're not frozen in grief. They're still resisting in their homeland. It means turning the page to a new hopeful chapter in our history. It means building a future... But also, the Nakba wasn't really like an actual event. Like, the Nakba is a structure of dispossession of Palestinian people that has gone on long before that date and has continued into the present day, where Palestinians have been displaced in favour of building a Jewish supremacist state. One where Palestine is free. Why do you keep talking about Vikings? What is that? I don't understand. To our people, with empathy, oh God, this is, he said it's not kumbaya. We don't need catchy slogans and performative outrage. We need pragmatic solutions. If you truly stand with Gazans, with Palestinians, then stand up for a future. Stand for peace, stand for life. Nakba means catastrophe, but we were not doomed to catastrophe. Well, I mean, as long as Israel exists, I think that Palestinians are a bit doomed to fucking catastrophe, you know, in the sense of Israel continually expels Palestinians.
Those who are displaying signs of anti-Semitism in response to what's happening in the Middle East and certainly in Gaza are not the allies of the Palestinian people. They are not helpful. They are harmful in the sense that they taint the entirety of the pro-Palestine community. They taint the justified Palestinian pursuit of freedom and liberation, and they harm our ability to work with the Jewish community. Learn more. Visit us at Realign for...
Like, what is this? What is this? Like, it's a shit website as well. What do they even say on here? Like, I'm really intrigued by Realign for fucking Palestine. The Rise of Reason. Palestinian Voices. I support Realign for Palestine project because I also seek to foster a transformative narrative for the Palestinian community. Who are these people? Hamza Hawadi. I've never heard of any of these people.
This is the chant that you will hear from Berlin to London to DC, and it sounds bold, and it's meant to provoke, but slogans like that don't live just in theory. Sometimes they spill into real lives, and when they spill, they might do that with bullets. Last night, 2 Israeli embassy staff were shot and killed outside the Capital Jewish Museum in DC.
So it's literally, this is literally just a group of propagandists who repeat Israeli propaganda, right? Like, this is literally just people who repeat Israeli propaganda. That's all it is. It is just people who do Israeli propaganda. There's no one else. Like, what are you actually talking about there? Saying, like, hey, you know, globalize the Intifada is this. Globalize the Intifada is tapping into the fact that Palestinians have a right to resist against Israeli occupation and all of these things.
Trust me, I
The Intifada, the first Intifada in particular, was predominantly non-fucking violent, and then because it failed and because Israel offered no solution, where did you end up? With violent militant resistance during the second Intifada. The Oslo Accords, Israel didn't give a fuck about them. It didn't want Palestinians to have a state. That's where the fucking problem lies.
It's not coming up. It's not. What happened since the anti-Hamas? What happened with the pro-Palestine movement since the anti-Hamas protests in Gaza? Has exposed it all, has laid it bare for everybody to see. All the journalists, all the social media influencers, all the outlets, the independent outlets out there. This was disruptive to the narrative. This turned things upside down. Nobody touched it. A mere handful of people wanted to touch it. I was supporting these folks in Gaza. I was helping them out. I was sending some of them money. I was giving them messaging advice. They asked me, what do we do? They asked me, mobilize support. You're in Washington. Go talk to policymakers.
It's just a lot of people who realize they're pretty fucking talentless and that they're not going to be able to achieve anything. And so the way that they do it is basically by just starting to work and be an Israeli propagandist.
I went to Capitol Hill. I talked to folks. I was trying desperately to get the mainstream media attention.
No, the one of the victims was a German guy who moved to Israel to join the IOF. People are correct in that.
These guys are not only
and an Israeli outlet posted that they were stalked.
True freedom fighters.
By the guy.
But they also actually proved wrong the insane Hasbara pro-Israel people that said everybody in Gaza is a terrorist. Everybody in Gaza loves Hamas. Everybody in Gaza... By the way, these people have always been there. They just, as Hamas has been weakened and as Hamas has become just that much more fascistic, they've decided to come forth. And so to see the ladder of escalation, it started with total radio silence about the anti-Hamas protesters. And it was so funny to see the indirect
This is literally their favorite thing in the entire world. How long even is this? God, there's another fucking 30 minutes.
Ethan, listen to this very carefully, my brother. The indirect union between the crazy pro-Palestine people and the insane and I'm putting pro-Palestine in quotes and pro-Israel in quotes, union between the pro-Palestine crazies and the pro-Israel crazies. The pro-Palestine crazies who love Hamas, who are anti-Semitic, who believe in the armed resistance fraud, and the pro-Israel people who believe that everybody in Gaza is Hamas, everybody's a terrorist. And so both parties had an interest in diminishing, overlooking, undermining, or ignoring the anti-Hamas.
No, they fucking didn't. Loads of people who talk about Palestinians being loads of people fucking spoke about this who think Palestinians are fucking horrible. So someone just posted, like, I don't know, this is his fucking LinkedIn. American Military University getting an MA, 18 semester credit, American Military University, University of and Professional Administrative, Lean Six Sigma, blah, 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 blah. Pretty fucking mad that you just go to the American Military University, you know? I'm pretty interesting.
Protesters in Gaza. And so it is the height of irony, the mother of all irony.
Like, if you're worried about universities being funded by Qatar and how that may affect people's opinions, but...
That is the only common ground.
In the bigotry of no expectation.
They have managed to establish throughout the entirety of this war is they were united against the innocent civilian people of Gaza who risked their lives. Some of them are very sick, very, very sick. But then focusing back on the pro-Palestine movement, then they took it a step further recently. And then we saw an actual overt attack against the actual true freedom fighters of Gaza, not the rapists and the murderers and the beheaders and the people who...
He would never use this term to talk about the IOF. I mean, he literally sits across from an IOF, he speaks to her.
Burn people alive, and the attackers and the child kidnappers and the murderers and the evil Hamas guys. No. Those are not freedom fighters. Those are a bunch of guys with salaries. Those guys all have salaries. Being a Hamas terrorist is an actual salary, okay? So, no, the real...
So is being an IOF soldier. You get to go work for fucking Google afterwards.
Freedom fighters who were literally protesting a terrorist ISIS-like fascistic organization while Israeli bombs were falling all around them, who were not getting paid for any of this, who were entirely organic, who, by the way, I've always believed, I've never once fomented those sentiments. They had to organically come from Gaza. And they've, like I said, they've always been there. Some of the pro-Israel people were like, well, these people are only protesting now because of the consequences of the war. Total BS, total hogwash. These people, there's always been, societal, political, ideological, and religious opposition to Hamas in Gaza. It's just...
it's just really hard because it's just like a bunch of just like sort of disconnected drivel of just basically saying, you get paid, so that means that what?
That now
It's just propaganda.
Group's behavior has just...
It is literally just getting someone who affirms everything that Ethan believes and bringing him on for that exclusive reason.
People to the breaking point. So that's where...
How do we support people in Gaza who are, as you say, the real freedom fighters?
Well, I think, we actually amplify the heck out of their actions and activities. We expose those who are opposing them, and literally, Ethan, just the reason why I was emphasizing the ironic unity, like shame the pro-Palestine people by telling them that you are in an indirect, because a lot of the pro-Israel people that follow me, because they love my anti-Hamas message, but they really are only interested in that, they're like, no, we don't believe them. These people are not insincere. This is Takia. They only want to stop the bombing. They don't love...
What the fuck is this? This is so weird.
Of the Jews. They don't, and I'm like, you guys are so stupid. There's a reason why a bunch of misbehaving, college students on undergrads have been able to beat Hasbara and the pro-Israel advocacy movement, because there is just such a blob of messaging. When it's not a dynamic messaging, it doesn't humanize the Palestinian people. It doesn't acknowledge that the Palestinian people are diverse and not monolithic. Again, this is actually another point of convergence between the crazy pro-Israel and crazy pro-Palestine people, is that there is an unwillingness to acknowledge the Gaza society, Palestinians in Gaza, they're not monolithic in how they see Hamas. And in fact...
Yeah, like, I mean, this is literally easy. You can literally, anyone can talk about this. Like, what is this? What is this? This is just like someone saying things, and it's like, he makes out as if, like, the pro-Palestine movement is the problem. Like, as someone just put it, Israel is starving children. It is burning them alive. Its only desire is to expel Palestinians. It doesn't give a fuck about Hamas. Like, that's the truth. Hamas hasn't played into its hands. Israel has always planned. Gaza has always been a problem. It tortured and brutalized Palestinians for non-violent resistance during the First Intifada. It tortured and brutalized Palestinians, it brutalized Palestinians during the Great March of Return. How can you sit here and say these things? Oh, there are these brave anti-Hamas protesters. The guy who fucking did the Great March of Return was anti-Hamas. You can literally see it here.
كيف اليوم في عدد كبير
عدد محترم.
ان شاء الله ما يكونش في اصابات كثير.
لا اصابات والله بجد هذا.
خاصة
انه الشباب قدموا كثير.
قصص حي.
شباب وين بقدموا شاف شباب وين واقفين اللي بقدم خطوة عنهم بطقوه.
I mean, you can watch this all yourself. I'm not going to watch on, but it's literally about this. This was non-violent resistance. There's a scene where he actually talks to Hamas, like people who are more pro-militant resistance. This is about a Palestinian medic who was murdered. It's about a Palestinian medic. Razan al-Najjar is her name.
حامي إلها إنه ما يضخوها ولا يعملوا معها إيش إنها تأخذ الإصابة اللي قدام.
نعم.
فهي وراجعة خبطوها رصاصة.
وين جت الرصاصة؟
في صدرها وطلعت من ظهرها وشظايا على رقبتها.
Like, literally, it's just about a medic being murdered at the Great March of Return. By the way, this guy's family was murdered by Israel. Like, you just see, also, this documentary is great because it shows you, like, the deep effects of Israeli, of, like, what happens to people after they're wounded. Here you go, this is how I think.
هذا المخيم
كان جدار بشري مستعلم المراجع.
انا والله دخلت الشغل وراح السلك. احنا كمان في عندنا اعتراض مش حق السبعه، بس احنا بدناش نخاطر ونموت بدون نتيجه يعني. يعني انا الان لما اقف قبل السلك ب 400 متر مثلا واقعد بس اقعد هيك، انا بوصل رساله. انا مش معني انه اقدم خسائر، انا ما بديش الشباب روحوا يا شباب على السلك بس عشان تستشهدوا عشان تتصوروا.
لكن احنا قبل جمعتين اول افطار نزل علينا قنابل الغاز.
طيب قنابل الغاز ولا في 16؟
صح، بس برضه في قنابل الغاز في عندك انت مثلا.
انا بدي اسالك سؤال، قنابل الغاز ولا في 16؟
لا طبعا قنابل الغاز.
طيب يعني شيء مقدور عليه يعني. خلينا في المعادله.
It's really interesting because obviously he's just talking to people about, like, I don't know, and I tend to agree with them. People die from tear gas, and like the situation in the West Bank is, but yeah.
احنا بدناش نروح لمعادله مثلا، المعادله دي تكون مش لمصلحتنا.
لكن احنا لو استمرنا بهذا الاسلوب حتى اقول لك لو مستقبلا بدنا نتخلص من الكوشوك ومن تطبيش الحجار ومن الطائرات الحارقه، مجرد بس نقف ونقول احنا بدنا نرجع اراضينا، بدنا العالم يتدخل. برايكم ممكن يجيب نتيجه؟
ممكن بس امريكا واقف حق نقد الفيتو ومعوقه علينا كل شيء. ما اخذها بالقوه لا يفرض الا بالقوه.
يا عمي ماشي كلام
قاعده
ماشي.
هذا هو مشروعنا احنا.
Like, also, by the way, you've just heard someone go, well, actually all Palestinians feel one way. Yeah, it's complex. There are very, very different things happening in Gaza, and you can see here people talking, hey, we believe in violent resistance.
طيب ايش مفهوم القوه؟
اليهود تمشي للغه العين وبالعين، لانه هي هذا الاولى والاخير. القوه احنا حنرجع بالقوه باذن الله تعالى.
طيب
الازان ما بفهم سلميه. خلينا احكي. الدكتوره الازان هذا بفهم سلميه، ما بفهم سلميه.
انا بتفق معك انه احنا اصحاب حق، انه هذا احتلال وهذا احتلال. طب خلينا نكمل بس، وهذا احتلال مجرم كويس. انا بتفق معك في كل هذا الكلام. انا الان لما احكي عن خيار.
But here's even the difference. Like, this guy is interested in non-violent resistance, right? Okay, he's from Gaza. I believe in non-violent resistance. I think it is a method. I think there is method to it. But, like, compare this to Ahmed Fouad Alkhatib. Ahmed Fouad Alkhatib was talking about how the blockade was, like, fine and it was relaxed and stuff.
السلمي او النضال السلمي ما بحكي عنه لانه انا ضعيف، انا بحكي عنه لانه هذا نقطه قوتي، لانه هذا اول شيء يعني اول شيء اليوم الاحتلال انت معادله المواجهه معاه في المعسكر. طب الان لو اجى وضربك بالاف 16 على سبيل المثال، هذا عنصر مش عنصر تفوقك انت كفلسطيني، انا عنصر تفوق اليوم. هذا الاحتلال احاصره اقتصاديا، احاصره اعلاميا، والموضوع طويل يعني الموضوع بالتراكم، مش بالضروره يحسم في يوم ولا يحسم في شهر ولا يحسم في شهرين. فلا السلميه مش خيار ضعف، ولا عمره كان السلميه خيار ضعف.
كل الحياه سلميه؟
والله انت اقول لك اذا في ايدك اي وسيله تستعيد فيها حقك انا مش ضدك.
احنا حنحقق، بس احنا بدنا شويه. اجت الفتره اللي العرب اتكلموا.
The Arab states betrayed us, so we were forced to resist peace.
علينا عشان هيك رحنا للسلميه، لو احنا العرب وقفوا معنا بالصار ما بنضرب اسرائيل.
اذا اكتشفنا انه قادرين ننجز بهذه الطريق وبخساره اقل ليش ما نكمل فيها؟ نكمل.
انت اليوم مش قادر تطلع جريح. ابش خليهم كمان 10000 اصفر، كمان 10000 اصفر.
10,000
بنفعش هذا الكلام.
انا مش سعيد بنطلع.
It's a really interesting documentary, by the way. It's a really interesting documentary. I would highly recommend that you watch it.
13,000 جريح، انا حزين على 13,000 جريح وبدنا نقللهم، بدنا نحاول نقللهم الان نعمل انشطه احنا كشباب.
But it's just interesting because obviously, you know, you get this vision from Ahmed Fouad Alkhatib. He's like, oh, Palestinians all hate Hamas. Yeah, there are also Palestinians who believe in non-violent resistance and all of these things.
As you opened so brilliantly at the beginning, I love how you opened. There's totally a disconnect, and that's my raison d'etre. That's why I'm out there. That's why
Because this guy, you're right, that's an actual discussion. This guy is a person who is adjacent to the US government, who is working with the United Arab Emirates and all of these countries and pretends that he is interested in peace and equitable solution. He doesn't like authoritarianism, the fascistic control of Hamas, but yet is willing to work with one of the most authoritarian countries in the world to go there and have like a nice fucking time talking with their leadership about a plan for the Gaza Strip. It's like, what is this, man? Like, this isn't some, like, reasonable guy. This is someone who's adjacent to some of the most fucking horrible organizations in the world.
I deal with the threats, and I...
Ahmed Fouad Alkhatib, thank you, that's his name.
Deal with the empanadas, and I deal with the Dalai Lamas, and I deal with the fools, and I deal with the attacks and whatever. Because the people of Gaza are what sustains me. The people of Gaza are what give me hope. The people of Gaza are the actual folks who genuinely and sincerely make it worthwhile for me. And actually, I wanted to show you, I wanted to send you this tweet, and I hope you're able to...
Yeah, we can. Just send it to...
to put it...
Send it in the chat and we can open it.
So I'm going to...
Look at that guy who endorses non-fucking violent resistance versus this piece of shit. Like, he's like, I'm imagining a new future. I lived in Gaza in 2005. I'm the Palestinian. I fry people like Hassan's mind. Here's Ahmed Fouad Alkhatib a few months ago saying, all those who have stood by as Israel exterminates Gaza are guilty. You know what's even fucking worse? This guy is working with Israel so it can do these things. He is standing by as they exterminate his own family, man. That is so fucked, and Ethan brings him on. The crowding itself has produced new tragedies, such as fell into a boiling pot of food at shelter in the Nusayrat camp in January. He died because of his injuries. Like, look at that. Read that, man. Like, read that. The American government has not done anything to constrain Israel. He said he's a fucking Democrat, you know? Ridiculous.
I'm going to send you just two particular, two. This one here, I'm going to send it in the chat. This one is from a person, a lady, who is in Gaza. And then this one... So let's start with Noor, and you can do, if you can, I don't know if you can show it on the show, but you can, the first one is in Arabic, and you can just do the Google Translate.
I'm pulling this up here, and you should probably be able to see it.
Post.
So it's in Arabic, you guys can see by someone named Noor, and I'm going to translate it.
There you go.
Unable to fetch. Oh. Why is it doing that? Well, I can just put it into Google Translate, too.
Yes, put it in Google Translate.
Yeah, let me do that.
And, yeah, that's weird, because on Twitter itself, for me, it translated wrong.
Okay, I got it. Okay, thank you. So here's the translation. Would you like me to read it?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
So she says, I don't know if you received this information or not.
You've got one person.
We in Gaza hate anything called resistance and any resistance fighter. After this war, we guarantee you that there will be no form of resistance, even resistance songs. We will ban them. The peace that will be in Gaza will shock you, and will produce generations that hate the Maximin and will.
It's one person, and you pull this up. There are people in Gaza who definitely, unequivocally support this.
Step on the graves of Sinwar and the Daif.
Wow. Daif.
Wow.
So that is a sentiment that is so ubiquitous, that is so widespread. But since we're in the show, let's show the other tweet, please. So Issa Amru is a super famous anti-occupation, anti-settlement guy in the West Bank. And at a time when...
This is actually the guy who's on, he was actually on the Louis Theroux documentary, Issa Amru.
And all of the...
I think he's got some pretty questionable views, to be honest.
Pro-Palestine people in the West are celebrating the murder, saying, kill them all, your own and everybody who's related to Israel. Read what this guy, who's literally daily daily being attacked by soldiers and by settlers. Read what he said.
He said, the murder of
It's also just one guy
any human
with
being
views.
should not be justified nor
It's just
celebrated
one
by
guy
anyone.
with views.
And this guy is literally, if you go to his profile, just really quickly, you can do it in your own leisure, you can do it now or whatever. It is full of, he's an internationally recognized activist. And every day he
So are many people. Like, what's your point?
gets terrorized by settlers who want to take over his house. And every day he gets
He just has some. I can't remember what it was. I remember. So my lecturer spoke about him a year ago, and I remember looking into some of the stuff he was saying, and I was like, I'm not so sure about some of the stuff that he says. But you know what? I'm not sure actually. I'm not sure. I can't remember exactly what I was talking about. And he is genuinely a guy who. I mean, like, here's literally a tweet of. Here's some settlers setting a fire outside of his house. You can see recently, and that was because he appeared in a Louis Theroux documentary, kind of.
gets attacked by them. The hilltop youth and the little ones and the big ones, and they're protected by the soldiers. And a few times the soldiers will come and push them away. Sometimes they'll beat him up. The soldiers will beat them up. The settlers. This guy has suffered so.
No. Issa Amro was in. Was in the Louis Theroux documentary. Yeah.
Horrendously. And yet somehow, someone...
Yeah, I'm sure that there were many Palestinians who do tweet things like that. But also, remember, Palestinians cannot express their views, especially if they live in the West Bank, because many of them have been arrested for social media posts.
Hey, he's able to be in the fulcrum of the military occupation of the Palestine and the dehumanization. And I think the complete awful reality that some Palestinians in the West Bank face.
Some! All of them face dog shit realities.
And to say, guys, like, geez, like, what is wrong with you? Like, all of these, like, Western-based people saying, like, "Rah, get him, kill those Zionist, representatives of the state, whatever. So that's...
Yeah, there's a video pinned on his profile. Today, February 13th, I was detained and beaten violently by an Israeli soldier in Hebron. I was showing the famous American writer Lawrence Wright.
He said he was proud of his wife doing this. He said he's reading about what his wife did in the West Bank. He is reading. Ethan Klein is sat here right now reading the tweet of what his wife did in the West Bank. And before he had that debate with Hassan, he said he was fucking proud of her.
The Israeli occupation and apartheid in my hometown. This video is very disturbing. I don't know if you've seen it. But,
and that's literally all of it.
I think his wife did that. His wife did that.
His wall.
So this guy manages still to be a true peace activist despite, facing violence on a daily basis.
But also to when did we lose the ability to say random acts of violence are not okay? Mm-hmm. Random killings are not okay.
They need asterisks. Everything needs an asterisk, right?
Unless they're Zion.
Because they exist within the context of what is happening in the world. Like, yes, someone being murdered in the street is not a good sign or indicative of a good place. But what is categorically worse than that is a state who slaughters and burns tens of children every single day, hundreds of people every single day, not with the goal of winning a war, with the explicit goal of expelling the indigenous people from that land. That is why they killed your family, and you sit here working with fucking Ethan Klein, man.
Zionists, and unless they work for the Zionist regime, and unless they're but that's what I'm saying is this is such a scary because I genuinely because I'm imagine a situation where this becomes the actual norm, where political violence in the United States or in Europe or in the Western world, and this is
states literally enact political violence all the fucking time, man. States are consistently engaging in acts of political violence against minorities, against many different people, and it is very much fucking normalized.
This is why it is difficult for me and to realize
just because the violence of the state is sanctioned, and it may not be as spectacular as just a killing in the street,
For Palestine and my website, my organization,
it doesn't make it okay.
To draw out the Palestinian pragmatists and moderates. A lot of them, they have families. A lot of them have businesses. Some of them started writing things, and then they start getting threats on social media, and they're like, "Oh, Ahmed, I'm sorry, I can't do this.
Mm-hmm.
I have a wife. I have this." And again, like, not everybody can acquire the means and the necessary tools to protect themselves, which I'm very, very well adept at using, and I'm not going to be afraid, and I'm not going to, curl up in a corner and be like, oh, mommy, I'm afraid. Like,
I guess when you go to military university, you learn a lot about how to shoot protesters.
No, like, I'm right here. I put my name, I put my face, I'm out there. I take precautions. I'm not cocky. But, like, like, what happened to these embassy staff is the same kind of political violence that the Hamasniks and the terrorists and the Muslim Brotherhood people, they want.
What? Also, why are you throwing in the Muslim Brotherhood there? Your little trip to the UAE might have taught you to tell bad things about the Muslim Brotherhood, Maybe he was told by his UAE handlers, hey, can you, or not his handlers, his little friends in the UAE, yeah, let's blame the Muslim Brotherhood so we can absolve Israel.
To normalize against people like myself for challenging Hamas's narrative. And the people who send you, skulls, human skulls, and that kind of garbage. Like, this is the slippery slope that we're headed down. And this is, like, it takes someone from the West Bank facing horror to say, hey, guys, like, can we please, stop and not...
I don't understand what the point is. You make this point of, like, Palestinians not being a monolith and then do this? I don't really get it.
Yeah, I'd love to see someone like Hassan talk to someone like that, but I just don't think that, again, it's not what's going to drive Twitch primes to him.
Well, so that's my question to you then is, I mean, what do you think? Like, I'm curious what you because
No. Mentioning the Muslim Brotherhood is not a slip. These people want to establish a Middle East that is governed by authoritarian states where people don't have rights, where the only thing they care about is perpetuating fucking capitalism and maintaining their own rule. They do away with political activism that moves towards human rights and stuff, and people like this are so complicit in it. Anyone associating with the United Arab Emirates, anyone wanting anything to do with it, anyone talking about the Muslim Brotherhood in this way, as if it is a scourge in the Middle East causing all the problems. Shut the fuck up. Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, have gone around the Middle East exterminating, backing dictators, in some cases meddling in the country's politics, like Egypt, where they funded Tamarod, a liberal opposition group, and positioned Abdel Fattah el-Sisi to take over. The guy killed 1,000 protesters in a day. Hamas never did that. Hamas never killed 1,000 protesters in a single day. And you know what? His friends in the US government were praising Sisi for restoring democracy. These people don't give a fuck about better lives for people in the Middle East. They want you to fall for what they're saying. They want you to fall for, ooh, I'm from the Middle East. I know the Muslim Brotherhood is scary. The Muslim Brotherhood are such a wide, various organization. Again, I don't love them. I know many of the people of the Middle East don't like them, but they also won a free and fair election. In Egypt, they won it, and then they were removed from power by a dictatorial, authoritarian piece of shit regime that sponsors genocide in Sudan.
I don't consider myself or call myself an influencer. I'm a writer, analyst, commentator. I'm an advocate. I'm not.
I'm sorry. I'm so sick of this because it is about more than Israel. But these states are fucking awful. Like, these states are so bad. Like, they're so bad. The political repression in Egypt. That's like a close Western ally. It's a fucking horrible dictatorship. And, like, that's not of concern to this guy. He's happy to go to the UAE. Like, oh, Hamas is so violent towards protesters. I think it might be more violent to do genocide or sponsor genocide.
Not, there's like, there's activism, there's advocacy, and then there's policy. And advocacy is somewhere in between policy and activism, where you have to interface with both communities. But, like,
it's just horseshit. It's like fucking the liberal fucking therapy speak. No real solutions.
Like, do you think over the years, I mean, like, why is it that a streaming but for the record, I'm not just speaking about your former colleague. I'm speaking generally. Why is it that we're in a place right now where a bunch of online streamers and podcasters and whatever, with no real understanding or link to the land or to the issue,
Here we go. It's these fucking pieces of shit like this. They play up their own... I literally wrote my dissertation about like this kind of stuff. About how there's this whole group and the UAE fucking loves them. I've told you guys about this before. There's literally a video of Abdullah bin Zayed going, if the West does not deal with radical Islam, it will end up with more terrorists than in the Middle East. And it's just like, you're a fucking dictatorship who tortures and murders, you know? It's so pathetic and disgusting.
Are going to develop opinions that we're supposed to care about and are going to tell everybody this is what time it is, and then are going to start...
People, look, what do you expect is the correct reaction to watching people be genocided, exterminated, subject to horrifying things for years upon years? 2 years nearly. We have seen the most abhorrent videos. We have seen bombings of hospitals, massacres of aid workers, 15 paramedics being shot and buried in the sea. Are you surprised that some people are developing problematic opinions when Western governments support that unequivocally? It's just kind of fucking insane that this is what these people reduce it to, that they go, well, actually, as a Palestinian, I understand it this way. Shut the fuck up, man. There are so many Palestinians who don't think like you. I don't need to hear your fucking dog shit opinion just because you're Palestinian. And the only reason I wanted to talk about this is because, yeah, one, it's fucking dog shit. But two, this is one of the biggest platforms in the world platforming this guy.
Attacking people like you for retweeting me and saying you're promoting genocide for retweeting Gaza. Like, how did we get here?
I think there's...
And the two of us lived in Israel, and they still dare to tell Ethan, for example, that he doesn't know what he's talking about, even though he lived there.
He doesn't know what he's talking about, and he has ignored me over and over again. If he wants to, I will go on Ethan's stream. I will talk to him. I will talk to him about his dogshit views, about why they're pathetic. But he wouldn't do that. I mean, I feel very passionately about this, and people act like you don't have a connection. And it's like, I would like to live in like a much more just and a world in which humans exist with dignity, you know? And like these are the people who have one of the biggest podcasts, you know?
From there. And,
I think...
Ella, by the way, you're not visible. I wish I would see you. Because
it's just I think Dan can switch, yeah.
Oh, there you are. Hello.
When she talks, yeah, then we'll switch to her.
Yes, let's switch to her, because I don't want you to be... Hi, nice to see you.
It's nice to see you. It's been so amazing to listen to you so far. It's something that I've been craving to hear for so long from anybody. And it's just like, it went...
This is the whole point, literally just getting a person on who speaks how they want. It is just affirming their already Orientalist dog shit beliefs. Hila being raised in Israel is not an indication of someone with a fucking reasonable opinion. It is someone who has been subjected to years upon years of really, really perverse genocidal propaganda and also like a very skewed Orientalist beliefs. Hold on, like, and let me just show you what Ethan believes.
They live together, you know. In the West Bank and in Gaza, it's a completely different story, which I say. But I think it's inspiring that you see that it's possible. It is possible.
Thank you very much, Elab, for your donation.
For Arabs and Muslims and Jews to live together in harmony, and they do in Israel proper.
That's Ethan's take, and as I say, this is what's happening in... This is what's happening. This isn't harmony. This is a state that has facilitated people chanting death to Arabs because they live in a world where they are allowed to literally take land off other people because they are born the wrong race. That's not normal. That's not fucking normal. To not be just unequivocally opposed to that. Ethan's not posting about children being burnt alive in the Gaza Strip. He spent all day posting because someone called Teddy fresh shit and trying to get Taylor Lorenz deplatformed.
Straight into my heart, everything he said.
Well, and I want to just acknowledge that you're also like, yeah, you're from Israel. You have family there. Like, you know, you're like, you have a right to speak about this. Like, this impacts you, and this impacts your family.
And also, thank you, Erratic. And I will always talk about Rabah, because this is literally people who are like, yeah, the bad, scary Islamists are the reason the Middle East is the way it is. Sisi's fucking secular. Sisi is fucking secular and murdered 1,000 people for protesting in a singular day. Like, I do not think that that is spoken about enough. Like, they tell you that the Middle East is the way because of bad Muslims. All of these people sell this fucking bullshit. It's just not true. It's just not true.
family, your folks, and where you're from. But it's like,
thank you so much, Chocky.
Why is it that I'm supposed to care what a bunch of streamers and podcasters?
So, I think there's like,
and why am I supposed to care what the opinions of a Palestinian who went to an American military university has to say about fucking anything?
so there's like a whole vortex of bad things happening. One, people are super disillusioned with like the media, so that nobody wants to get their news from the media. That's where suckers get their news. Also, like, we're at a point in American society when capitalism is really not at its finest hour.
Capitalism is not at its finest hour. What is the finest hour of capitalism? When people were in fucking workhouses and having to work after their arms got cut off. When was the finest hour of capitalism? The Great Depression. Capitalism is dog shit because it is an unworkable ideology that cannot provide for human beings. We are driving ourselves towards extinction and extermination, destroying the planet.
There's huge disparities, and a lot of people feel helpless, right? And
the huge disparities are part and parcel of capitalism.
They don't see positive outcomes coming in the status quo.
Contributions of Palestinians? I'm not sure I understand the full context. But thank you so much for your incredibly kind donation.
And I think a lot of people, leftist ideology, socialism, communism, Marxism, whatever, is becoming popular. And in this doctrine...
Why do you think it's becoming popular? It is becoming popular because capitalism shows that it is a fucking failure. Capitalism shows that it cannot provide for all human beings, that these disparities are innate, that it is hollowing us out, that the only reprieve we have is just consuming weird shit on our phones, and all of us are fucking addicted to it because life just gets increasingly fucking miserable. It is not a workable system, and also to lump all of these things together is just weird, and to just dismiss it as someone who has had no serious engagement with communism, socialism, Marxism, or Marxist thought, or decolonial thought is just idiotic.
Worldview, it's very much oppressor, oppressee. I mean, I know that's almost become like a talking point, but it is genuine.
Of course, in the context of Palestine, there are settlers who went to that land and dispossessed the indigenous people. Whereas, and that binary is very fucking strong. Like, just also being just ground down to fucking cogs in the machine. Cogs in just like a pointless machine that just does nothing, where there's just no meaning, where I have to walk the streets of England and it's just filled with fucking homeless people, like suffering, and I say fucking homeless people in the context of meaning like, it's just really sad to see people in horrible, horrible situations. Like, horrible situations. I'm not saying that it's like, oh, I'm not coming at this from a perspective of, oh, God, I hate seeing them. It's just miserable that human beings are reduced to that they're denied a basic right to a house, like, and that's all over and a common massive thing in America?
Genuinely just the truth, is that they see, the worldview doesn't allow them to see complications. They'll look you in the face and say, what's happening in Israel is not complicated. Israel's the bad guy, Hamas is the good guys.
Well, I don't think that's what people say. People say the cause for Palestinian liberation is good, whereas the genocidal settler colony is not good.
And like, they're incapable of doing that because in their worldview, there's the colonizer and there's the colonized, and and it's up to the colonizers, the colonized, to kill, take over, resist the colonizers, and there's just a really, I think.
Ethan Klein, the modern day Frantz Fanon. Ethan Klein, the modern day Fanon. Wow, what powerful work.
I think that the amount of these people feels I hope to God that it's somewhat exaggerated because of how we perceive them. I mean, Twitter and TikTok.
Fanon doesn't go, let's kill every colonizer. What Fanon actually says is, hey, there are problems amongst the colonized. He talks about this in Black Skin, White Masks. You can actually read his work rather than going, oh, there's colonized and colonizer, and this is what it is, and that's what it is. When you haven't read or bothered engaging with it, perhaps if you did, maybe you would have a bigger feeling. Fanon literally talks about how liberation is much more important and how colonization is this perverse sickness that transforms colonizers into really bastardized, horrible, horrible people. And I tend to agree with him. I think colonialism and the move towards it and the belief that there are certain human beings in this world that are inferior, that have inferior cultures to white people is an ideology that you should probably be fucking working against. And in the case of Israel, of course, it's people have inferior cultures to Judaism and Zionism.
And online, you see Hassan, who's become like, you know, was the #1 political streamer until recently, but there's just a whole vortex of terrible conditions that's kind of, you know, making.
Ethan Klein is worried about the colonized taking over the colonizer. Exactly, and I think that's kind of indicative of what Ethan Klein actually believes.
Yeah, making people.
He's worried that Zionists and Israelis will be displaced from a position of supremacy, that there will be a more equal situation in historic Palestine.
Scrambling people's brains, you know? It's just... And I mean, obviously there's a lot of, like, introspection to go on there. I mean, like, our government, our capital... I am a social democrat. I believe capitalism is a good system. But...
I would like for Ethan to explain why capitalism is a great system. I mean, I guess it is great when you do fucking 2 hours of work, 3-4 hours. You 3-4 hours a day. 3-4 hours is generally the max work you do. You have a whole bunch of people who do everything for you, who look after your kids, clean your house, who do all of these things for you. I'm sure capitalism feels like a great system then, but for all of the people whose time is literally just transformed into basically capital, that's not good, is it? That's not like a good, amazing thing.
The way it's working right now is dysfunctional, and it's not working. And so the people are feeling hopeless. And I think that's when you get these kinds of radical...
But, like, what do you mean it's not working and it's not functioning? Like, what do you mean? Like, okay, yeah.
Ideologies and these people who are just, you know, so disillusioned that they're willing to kill...
I love that people are disillusioned as they're fucking...
Great for his wife's Pootie Tang clothing shop. Yeah, I'm sure it is fucking great for just having obscene amounts of money, you know? And, like, also, right, this is one of the most powerful quotes in The Wretched of the Earth that I think Ethan would do well to understand, but of course the guy cannot read anything that isn't from fucking ChatGPT. They will not manage to divide the progressive forces which mean to lead mankind towards happiness by brandishing the threat of a third world which is rising like the tide to swallow up all of Europe. The third world does not mean to organise a great crusade of hunger against the whole of Europe. What it expects from those who for centuries have kept it in slavery is that they will help it to rehabilitate mankind and make man victorious everywhere once and for all. But it is clear that we are not so naive to think that this will come about with the cooperation and the goodwill of the European governments. This huge task, which consists of reintroducing mankind into the world, the whole of mankind, will be carried out with the indispensable help of European peoples who themselves must realise that in the past they have often joined the ranks of our common masters where colonial questions were concerned. To achieve this, the European people must first decide to wake up and shake themselves, use their brains and stop playing the stupid game of Sleeping Beauty. That's a good quote. That's a fucking really, really base quote. That's a really... And it's kind of indicative of... Fanon is often reduced to, yeah, he was really violent, man. Like, he hated the settlers. I remember this guy messaged me about the Wretched of the Earth being bad. Does that sound like a guy who's like, yeah, I think we should kill all people? No! He's literally saying that Europeans need to fucking wake up and change things. Like, and change how and the way in which they behave and to move towards something that is better, to join in a collective struggle. And that's what the Palestinians are demanding, whereas all of them, they demand from the world the joining and the rejection of the idea that Palestinians are dispensable human beings, that they do not have a right to live with dignity in their own homeland. That's what this is all about. And then these two are like, yeah, actually, I think that they're not helping the Palestinians. And I think me, by taking a paycheck that comes indirectly from the US government, is fucking good. Piece of shit.
Fucking paying $100,000 a year.
Well, that's the ironic part, right?
To go to Columbia and Harvard.
The true irony.
Yeah, I love to hear.
As they're making millions from streaming.
Yeah. Well, that's the irony, right? And I feel like this is kind
Ethan, you make millions from spreading hatred towards Palestinians.
of common within communist revolutions too. Is that it's the bourgeoisie who, LARP as the proletariat and lead them, tells them how to feel and what they need to do, and they become the thought.
There was a bit of this in the Russian Revolution. I mean, Lenin was himself like a very rich man, I believe. He came from like a rich family. But at the same time, he was basically trying to reject this and join with, people to lead for a better society in Russia. It's kind of fucking mad, you know, that you sit there and talk and behave like this and you say these things. Bourgeoisie. Bourgeoisie. The fucking bourgeoisie!
Thought leaders to the proletariat, and it's almost like a sick joke.
But then also many sort of Marxist and progressive movements that have struggled against dominationist, like horrifying movements, that imperialist movements, were themselves colonized people who had suffered greatly, you know?
True. You see the people on the campus of Columbia, like you said, were paying $100,000 a year.
Lenin was rich, and his wife had a Pootie-Tang clothing company, and he used to have maids that did everything for him, and like people who would play sound bites on his podcast, and then he would dictate to the proletariat
a year because they come from like a multi-million-dollar family led. Yeah, exactly. And they're the ones that are the most convicted about it. Yeah. I think there's also something else. I think there's a lot of generational guilt with what happened in Iraq and how America's
because the same thing that is happening in fucking Palestine is the same thing that happened in Iraq. It was America trying to maintain regional supremacy. It's not generational guilt. It's people waking up and saying that it's all fucking stupid. It's all pointless, that we are just killing human beings to maintain a system that just denigrates certain human beings towards death.
Conducted itself since 9/11, and I think there's a huge
conducted itself since 9/11. My brother, what did they do in Vietnam? What did they do in Cambodia?
Overreaction to that, or overreaction. Who can say, right? But I think there is a large influence on young people's minds who grew up learning like this was a terrible thing that we did. Millions of civilians died. It was all a lie. And it's become like It's become.
What are the odds he's gonna justify the Iraq War?
Like American unexceptionalism. It used to be American exceptionalism. Now it's everything in America is.
This is unbelievable analysis. This is unbelievable analysis. Yes, America isn't exceptional. Doesn't Alexis de Tocqueville talk about like how America sees itself as exceptional, but it's really not. In fact, you know. It's funny, America modeled itself on Greek democracy, and didn't they, like, exclude most people from voting, and then America just did this.
Is bad.
America excluded so much of the population because they were black. Like, honestly, it's mad.
It can't be salvaged. It's the worst. It's whatever it is, if it's American, it's the worst, it's unsalvageable, and we hate it. And these are people who are coming.
Yeah, it's a very fucking reasonable opinion. I would say America's conduct around the world, its history, its behavior, its association with horrifying regimes. Do you know, I would highly recommend Blowback, because I was shocked by Blowback. They literally sanctioned Vietnam for going in and taking out the fucking Khmer Rouge.
Coming up from affluent families. And I think it's them feeling generational guilt for what America has done since 9/11. And like, again, that's an understandable feeling and perspective. But I think it's dangerous when a bunch of young people who have no life experience and no.
What life experience do you have? You went to Israel. You grew up in fucking America. You said to yourself that you never had a black friend.
Frankly, actual perspective.
What is your perspective? Your wife is an Israeli soldier. What is that fucking perspective?
So convicted by things that it draws them to radical behavior. And I think that's just what's happening.
Or because perhaps in the context of Palestine, it is so glaringly obvious that the Western system will literally let allies do anything. But when it comes to Palestinians, we just talk about how they're like evil monsters.
Fortunately.
Well, and to tie it all together, like, just to clarify, because I'm sure...
Yeah, and also, people saw in the walk in Iraq, Greenspan admits Iraq was about oil. So, Ethan, if you're sat there going, yeah, I think these people have intergenerational trauma, and I like capitalism, I think it's a good system, but, like, it justifies an invasion that kills millions? Yeah, I'm not so sure that that's good.
Some are going to look at this conversation we're having, and they're going to be like, well, you haven't said anything about the horror in Gaza and whatever. Like, of course we're horrified by what's taking place in Gaza. Of course we don't want the children starving, and like,
have you noticed Ethan never asked these fucking idiots any difficult question like, what do you think there's a genocide going on there? Because he doesn't think there is. He just says it so he can get people off his back and he can pretend he's pro-Palestine. It's actually comical.
Of course, I care deeply about saving what remains of my family members. I lost the 2 childhood homes I grew up in. Our family lost everything, just like the rest of Gaza mostly has lost everything. The point is, number one, how can you be a good advocate and a good custodian of this cause in the Western diaspora, in the world, so that you're not making it radioactive and toxic and pushing people away?
Literally nothing. Fucking the leader of Israel said in 2015, Benjamin Netanyahu, said that the Mufti of Palestine was the one who gave Hitler the idea to kill Jewish people. That is something that was said by Benjamin Netanyahu. That is the thing that was said by Benjamin Netanyahu. Oh, he also said recently that saying free Palestine is like Nazism. I'm sorry, there is one horrible state that spends billions and billions of dollars trying to make the Palestinian cause look radioactive. Whatever people do, they would say that it's radioactive. Pro-Palestinian marches in the UK have been called hate marches by government officials.
And I would say this to kids, and they're like, you know, especially...
I've not seen Israelism. Thank you very much, Druzilla. I've always wanted to watch it. Many people talk about it, so perhaps I should watch it.
On Columbia, Students for Justice in Palestine. And they were like, well, first, they blocked me. Second of all, they were like, we are...
WSJP Columbia, shout out, fuck Ahmed Fouad Alkhatib.
Not in the business of making our cause palatable to Zionists.
Yeah, I hear that.
Yeah, why should you make your cause palatable to the people who believe that Palestinians don't have a right to live in their indigenous homeland?
Like, they don't want to make it palatable. And I'm like, okay, so you're just going to make it tolerable then only to a bunch of lunatics in your, like, field? Like who are you going to appeal to?
Exactly.
Like,
what is the end goal?
It's way worse than that, because all they do is empower people like fascist elements, conservative, fascist, right-wing elements that hate brown people, that hate immigrants, that fucking do whatever the fuck they want. And it's...
In the UK, the Palestine Solidarity Campaign collaborates with the police heavily. It does everything. It does every single thing. The Palestine Solidarity Campaign is very much a thing. It has a set list of speakers, people like Owen Jones, who consistently talk about the experience of Jewish people, who often likes to distance himself from more, what you would call, like, more radical opinions in terms of, like, people being, I don't know, Owen Jones can be a bit too statey and stuff and all of these things. But, like, the PSC has this approved list of people. It's not going to have, like, really people who speak very radically against the state of Israel, right? Palestine Solidarity Campaign, yes. And yet it's still called fucking hate marches. They're still not allowed to go near a synagogue, even though they were willing to, like, do it at a time when the Jewish people weren't there practicing. It has huge amounts of Jewish people at these protests. It's still fucking smeared. I'm sure a lot of people there believe in two-state stuff, you know?
It's like, it's just so self-defeating. And
it is like you said, it's just pushing people away. Like, yeah. Ethan and I are totally on board. Like, we want to figure it out. We want free Palestine. We want all those things. And they're pushing us away.
What do you want? What do you want?
Like, we are the devil. Like, you should see how they talk about us.
Oh, I'm sure
Like, look at this. So the PSC does not take a position either in support or against a one-state or two-state solution, but insists that any solution must be based on the protection of human rights. And, like, you can just read it here. Like, the PSC is not like some radical evil organization, you know?
He gets it just... I have no doubt.
So what is the end goal? What are they actually working towards? I don't understand.
Shut the fuck up! Shut the fuck up! What are they working towards? Liberation that you and your wife oppose.
Then.
I mean, it's like...
Yeah, I don't...
AB sat there. Someone said he implies that the thing AB's dad works for is an arm of the Muslim Brotherhood.
But the other thing, too, it's like, this is what I said, remember? There's activism, there's advocacy, and then there's policy. A lot of times, policy makers are so far removed from the messaging of advocates and the community and activists and advocates. Advocates, however, are uniquely positioned where you kind of graduate from...
It's word salad. It's like listening to Jordan fucking Peterson talk about this.
Being an advocate, an activist that just yells and screams and says things that feel good to actually caring about being pragmatic, actually caring about achieving things, because you're an interlocutor between the policy guys up here and the activists. And I'm not saying, like...
What is this? The policymakers are just doing genocide and unequivocally supporting genocide? We've had to wait for like 2 months of starvation for them to even start saying, hey, the starvation might be wrong, and they were okay with so much else, so much more extermination?
I'm not saying activists are the bottom of the ladder. I'm talking about the ladder, the bottom of the power of the ladder from a societal point of view. I'm simply talking about the ladder of power and access, influence, and change. From my perspective, advocates are somewhere in the middle, and the state of advocacy right now for the Palestinian people. I mean, how about the fact that if you're Jewish or pro-Israel or self-identifying as Zionist, you have a spectrum of organizations and things to be a part of.
Yeah.
You have J Street, you have Israel Policy Forum, you have AIPAC, you have the ADL, you have AJC, you have the Jewish Community Centers, you have the Jewish...
You have Beta, you have the Kahana movement, you have so many great and awesome things to be a part of.
Federations. You have the Zionist Organization of America and the World Zionist Congress, and you have the Jewish National Fund and Jaffe and all this infrastructure. If you're, Arab, Muslim, Palestinian, and you want to express sentiments of support for the Palestinian people and channel your energies and have that be harnessed in a constructive, meaningful way, basically at a national level, all you have is Students for Justice in Palestine, much of which I think has devolved to just be a complete disaster. Or you have CARE, which is Muslim Brotherhood adjacent.
AP's dad. So what if it's fucking Muslim Brotherhood adjacent, bro? You're fucking UAE adjacent. You're American government adjacent.
That's basically your two options. Is, Students for Justice in Palestine that supports armed resistance as an option, or CARE. Not very compelling. And then it devolves into this permanent, well, look at the Jews, and they have AIPAC, and they control the Congress, and they control the policies, and they control this and that. And it's like, wait.
AIPAC, there are a lot of American policymakers who just know that if you lift your head up, your time is going to be so much harder. But AIPAC do have say,
Last time I checked, Palestinians.
No, he's saying what you should do is you should just listen to exactly what this guy says and only stay within those confines of exactly what he says. And also, by the way, there are loads of fucking, Libby things for Palestine, different things that you can be parts of, so I don't really understand it.
And Arabs and Muslims in the United States, cumulatively, are some of the most, I would argue, successful minorities in the United States, professionally, academically, and otherwise. Why hasn't there been, over the decades, any meaningful attempt at building either one piece of infrastructure or multiple pieces of infrastructure through which you vector young people's energies, through which you
why
teach...
is that? Why do you think that is?
What is this? What is this? Yes, people have done this. There are Alex Ode was a Palestinian peace activist who believed in there's the American Anti-Arab Discrimination Congress and things like that advocate for Palestinians in a much more Libby sense, but...
Is that?
I mean, I have multiple theories about that. I'm in DC. I speak to people. I try to fundraise. I try to do this. Honestly, I think some of it is just petty communal divisions. I think some of it is genuine ignorance of the fact that there's so many people who I talked to some folks in Silicon Valley or some folks in LA about trying to build up infrastructure here in DC to advocate for Palestinian rights in a sophisticated manner that can actually build infrastructure and harness some energies beyond the...
What do these words mean? Why are you saying these things? I don't know what these words mean. What are you saying? What, that you basically just go, Israel's okay and good and just and we should have peace in the Middle East without any serious analysis?
The free Palestine, and without the stupid, let's cover up with a keffiyeh and do revolution.
They cover up their faces because the US government targets them. And because Zionist organizations post their faces everywhere and try and prevent them going and getting jobs. It's just, what? What is this?
An intifada, to actually be sophisticated so that we have a greater chance of being heard and being influential. And one guy, didn't know what think tanks were. The other guy was he just kept bringing it back to how the Jews control everything and no matter what we do, the Jews will not. And he said this gentleman was a multi-millionaire.
Yeah, some people are very stupid and very rich, like Ethan.
And he was interested, and he was telling me how he was disturbed by some of the messaging from college activists and campuses and how harmful he thought. So then the other thing is, like, there were a few attempts at being pragmatic. There's something called the American Task Force on Palestine. And they were ruthlessly mauled by the community as being sellouts, and Rashid Khalidi was very much so part of the effort to try to take them down, to try to undermine them, to try to push.
Who were they? What was it?
It was basically an effort to try to have dialogue.
And also, just to say something earlier, the resistance narrative that it just sort of failed, the resistance has failed. Resistance slowed Israeli annexation of Palestinian land many years ago. But yeah, I didn't know that the Filton 18 court dates are in that day. Very interesting. A task force that alleges to speak on behalf of Palestinians is nothing but a sham. Let's have a look at this. The Palestinians are in crisis. Their leaders are weak and self-interested. Opportunists work to fill the void. Many Palestinians haven't heard of the American task force or only learned about it a few years ago. When someone asked me if I'd seen the web pamphlet condemning the one-state solution, I hadn't. Several minutes so they just spend their time condemning the one-state solution. It is a Washington organization designed to promote a particular line on Palestine. The group is tasked with feeding the State Department palatable fictions like 2 states of 2 people. In return, organization heads are invited for dinner. He's clearly just upset. He's clearly just upset that people don't like the kind of shit he does. I mean, you can read all of this. It's probably just some shit Libby organization. Like, it'll be exactly the same as what he does.
Communication with the Jewish community, but also to engage the Bush administration, Condoleezza Rice, to work within the U.S. system, both the executive and the legislative, but especially the executive. Again, in an elegant, sophisticated way that could also act as an arm of, like, for the Palestinian Authority and the Palestinian National Project in the United States, but to do so, again, and I hate to use the word, overuse the word sophisticated. It is not to Palestinian National Project in the United States, but to do so, again, and I hate to use the word, overuse the word sophisticated. It is not to, I'm not saying it in an elitist sense per se. I'm simply saying sophisticated as in not the trash we're seeing on, like, this college
not
campus.
the black and white.
Like, not the black and white, not the, like, revolution, intifada, like, we're gonna all, in this, like, cartoonish villain imagery that we see.
I don't understand why he doesn't support the concept of the intifada. Did he say the Palestinian Authority? I'll recheck that, because I thought did I miss it?
But also to engage the Bush administration, Condoleezza Rice, to work within the U.S. system, both the executive and the legislative, but especially the executive. Again, in an elegant, sophisticated way that could also act as an arm of, like, for the Palestinian Authority and the Palestinian...
The Palestinian Authority, the people who kill people. There is no Chris Kunzler Discord as of now. I don't know if I'll make one. I don't think I will.
We're gonna all, in this, like, cartoonish villain imagery that we see. No, like, people are proud, like, show our faces. We're here, we're going to be dressed up, we're going to sit down with policymakers, and we're going to talk about how we can work with the Jewish community. And this is even before, JVP was even a thing, Jewish Force for Peace, and some of these leftists have spaces. And, but that was seen as a bridge too far for a lot of, even for a lot of academics, and a lot of, even the business people in the Palestinian community. But that was, like, it started falling apart in...
You can read about I mean, I don't know if I want to watch anymore. This is so shit. He's so boring.
2006 to 2008. But... that's the problem with our community, is the emotionality. It's the lack of true vision, the lack of, like...
they should all be respectable and nice and good, and then that's the alternative, and smart.
I've had people in other think tanks that talked about trying to get wealthy Arabs and wealthy Palestinians to invest in DC fellowships for young Palestinian professionals, to learn about how does Congress work, how does the executive branch work, like, to be involved, in Washington, be here, go to the State Department, go, and that does happen, but that's individual family members who...
Does he think the Palestinian Authority are too radical?
Hurts their kids. That's not a lot of communal push and effort to say we're going to do this as a community, as part of a sophisticated infrastructure that harnesses our resources, our know-how, and that, honestly, quite frankly, I think even if you were to do the aforementioned, then you're going to inevitably hit the messaging wall. What is the messaging wall? It's twofold. Can you work with Zionists? Can you accept working with Zionists and the mainstream Jewish organization?
I don't know how you can work with people who don't believe that you have right to live in your land.
And Jewish community as allies, prospective allies, or even as a necessary evil, quote unquote. And then the second piece is, what are you advocating for? Like, 2 states, okay, how is a Palestinian state going to be framed in a way that's advantageous to U.S. interests? How is a Palestinian state not going to be...
But why does it have to be? Why does it have to be advantageous to U.S. interests? It is a state in the fucking Middle East! It is a state in the Middle East. I don't care about the US's fucking interests. Do away with the US. Like, how is that what you want to sell it as. That it should be useful. No, it should be useful because Palestinians get to have their own life.
A platform for Hamas's terrorism. How is a Palestinian state not going to be sabotaged by the Iranian meddling? Iran, every day, Palestinian security forces in the West Bank, they foil attempts by the Islamic Republic of Iran to send money, to send guns, and I have the receipts. I know the people who are involved in these efforts. Like, it does happen.
Oh, so they foil them every single day.
Numerous plots are foiled.
That's another thing that I never see anybody here talk about, is the involvement of Iran and the funding.
Oh, really? I mean, there's never going to be a free, stable Palestine while the Ayatollah's regime is still standing.
Yeah,
there's no free Palestine. There's not going to be a free Palestine.
There's a malicious...
There's not going to be a free Palestine whilst America still stands.
invisible hand pushing...
A malicious and invisible fucking hand, bro. Like, what's the US government? What's the US government? What's the United Arab Emirates? What are people like this? Like, what the fuck?
You know, Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis to, conflict, right? And
why does resistance to genocide need to be elegant and sophisticated? They just want any way to put in... Exactly! Israel has been doing genocide against Palestinians over and over again. Like, for decades, they have denied Palestinians a right to live with dignity in their own homeland. And they should be sophisticated and respectable. And by the way, there is not going to be freedom and peace and anything equitable in the Middle East for all people until Western influence is gone. It's not fucking Iran. Sure, getting rid of Iran, getting rid of the Iranian government. There are many people in Iran who want that. But what many people also don't want is to just end up being like many other nations who are free from Iranian influence but are influenced by other countries that are incredibly unequal. I mean, straight away there are Egyptians posting in here about horrifying inflation and all of these things.
And it's...
But are you going to talk about that, like, again, do we have a cohesive Palestinian body, or several bodies, that hits Palestinian American and Arab American and Muslim American bodies that aren't cut off all funding to Israel because we know in the near term that's not really feasible. Like, even if you disagree with it, you can withhold some particular aid packages or whatever, but overall, you need to be defined by what you're standing by.
So what, cutting off all aid to Israel shouldn't be done?
What you stand for, not just what you're against.
Right.
Of course we're against the Israeli military occupation, but is the occupation all of Israel, or is the occupation the 1967 borders? What are we going to do about the settlements? Like, can we normalize the idea that Palestine will live side by side next to a safe and secure Israel? Like, make that
This is already something that Yasser Arafat talked about. Yasser Arafat moved towards this kind of crap in the 1970s. It didn't work. There was an organized Palestinian movement that was more interested in diplomacy than militant resistance, especially after Lebanon in 1982. Arafat recognized Israel. He said it had a right to exist, and he got nothing in return. He got nothing. This is just a really perverted version of what's happened in Palestine. I can't wait for this to be over.
A talking point in the Palestinian community, in the diaspora, and build power in DC and in the business community, and bring the totality of that to Washington. And I think you got yourself a very compelling piece of infrastructure. Instead, we're not only divided, but we're reliant on a bunch of academic spaces that are utterly useless. They are basically 5 steps above Hamas in terms of the radicalization of young people, both Arab Americans, Muslim Americans, and Palestinian Americans, but also non-Arabs, people that are allies in applying, critical race theory, critical Palestine theory, mapping out Israel and Palestine.
What's critical Palestine theory? It is literally just platforming a discursive point that existed during COVID to trick people into thinking that people who argued that black people lived in bad situations, there should be change. And they literally deployed this talking point with the explicit goal of undermining that.
To abortion rights, women's rights, immigrant rights, Black Lives Matter, the capitalism, anti-capitalism, anti-civilization, anti-this.
Palestine doesn't have money or power, so the US doesn't care. I mean, in many ways, I agree with you. The Zionist project sells weapons. It acts as a good conduit in the Middle East. But yeah.
Anti Western civilization. My point is, the Palestinian issue has become a dumping ground for all sorts of causes, issues, activists. And our community is not really in charge of leading this issue. Our community, and then the few leaders that we have, like that Nardine Kiswani in New York within our lifetime, you know who I'm talking about?
I don't.
You probably better. We'll just look it up. Nardine Kiswani. But the few Palestinian prominent voices, Nardine Kiswani, Susan Abul Hawa, Mohammed El Kurd, we have some horrendous online social media influencers and activists in the diaspora who might as well just...
Yourself, you stupid prick.
They might as well just get Israeli passports and work for the Israeli ministry.
You know what's funny? We joke that Baden Penada must work for the Mossad. He must be a Mossad plant because he does a lot of work to make the entire movement look worse. And so I think that's a good working theory right now.
Baden Penada does not make the fucking movement look worse. For all of these fucking claims, Baden Penada doesn't make it look worse.
I mean, that's why I invite these guys. Like, I just say, honestly, a bunch of them, they might as well, like...
Yeah, he mentioned Mohammed Al-Kurd. Like, it's just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. Mohammed Al-Kurd is not bad for the movement.
Electronic intifada. Like, come on. Just please, Israel, do us a favor and give them...
What do you think you do for fucking Israel? Like, what do you think? You actually do exactly what Israel wants. You sell yourself as a Palestinian. You explicitly use your identity as a means to profit.
Give them a passport.
Just bring them on board.
These people are the best Hasbara, forces. Israel spends...
These people are the best Hasbara forces. Anyway, let me get back to agreeing with everything you've said and justifying everything you say, Ethan.
And the Jewish community spend massive sums trying to promote the Jewish perspective and voices and narrative. Why waste your time? Just when you have a bunch of, dumbass...
That's kind of what my point was with the shooter, too. He's doing so much for the...
He doesn't do things. Israel says it's going to do genocide. That has to be stopped. You actually do things that are in service of Ethan has literally spent his time trying to get Hassan Piker, many other people deplatformed, And it's just ridiculous. It is just ridiculous.
Worst people. But we're running out of time here, so I want to ask you to close it up. I want to ask, one, what are steps that we as people who want to do what we can to help, how do we kind of like resist, push back on like Netanyahu and the psychotic forces coming out of Israel?
I would probably suggest that you engage in a 2-year-long crash out where you go on and on about how Israel is a great place where you want to take your kids, that it's a really inspiring example of coexistence, that you continually justify your wife's service in the Israeli genocidal army, and then maybe you try and get one of the biggest pro-Palestine streamers deplatformed, and also just attack and be really misogynistic to loads of different women and continually call them bitches.
Well,
but that's just one idea. That is just one idea, and I think it could really help because this guy is one of the greatest advocates for Palestine, I hear.
And then how do we? Well, are you have an organization? Are you part of a nonprofit? What do you do? Is there a place we can donate?
Yeah. So let me start with the first one real quick. I mean, this works. This only works. Like Ahmed is only, and pragmatic Palestinians are only successful if there are within Israel and within the Jewish community in the diaspora, especially, Jewish Americans and Israeli Americans. Because, unfortunately, both of our communities, believe it or not, are gripped by similar dynamics, where the number of centrist, center-left, and center-right Israelis that I speak to on a regular basis, and they're like, Ahmed, what you're describing is exactly me when I try to say, look, guys, I hate Hamas, but, like, Smotrich saying we're going to concentrate the population, it's 3 days.
They hate it. They hate it because they say out loud what the Israeli government does. I think I hate the concept of Palestinians ever having been expelled and being denied rights to return to their land, 4
days ago, when he said we're going to concentrate the population down south so that Trump's plan works and they're all kicked out, basically bragging about ethnic cleansing. Like, I tell my Israelis friends, like, and family, this is terrible. Like, we can't, like, as Israelis and as Jews, like, we have values. Like, we're a democratic country. Like, we can't get behind it.
We're a democratic country where Palestinians are targeted by specific laws, where they are surveilled in a much different way.
This is like a moral decay from within. And they're like, oh, you're self-hating, like you're worse than Hamas, you're terrible. Or when they push back on the fact that Netanyahu has stalled and dragged this out, etc. So, like, I would
Netanyahu has stalled and dragged this out. He's trying to expel everyone from the Gaza Strip.
Argue that it is the height of being a Zionist or an Israeli patriot to call out. And you guys don't have the excuse, at least for us, we have the excuse of being under the boot of a terrorist organization, which is a legitimate excuse. You guys have democracy, okay? You guys have free expression. That, yes, sometimes being...
What? Israel regularly arrests and attacks people who work against the Israeli occupation. Like, even fucking liberals who just, like, go, I really love Israel, but, like, oh, I want things to, I want things to change. They even beat the fuck out of them.
Being eroded by the police violence, but nevertheless, Israel's a free society. And so, and...
It's really fucking not.
And the discourse, the diversity of discourse within the Jewish community, my impression, having as an outsider, is part of the tradition, a long tradition, like 2 Jews, 100 opinion kind of jokes. So I strongly hope that there is a similar push by a multitude of pragmatic allies on the Jewish side to say, listen, we need to stop Hamas from seizing a lot of the aid and reselling it and making money off of it.
There's literally no proof of this. There is literally no proof of Hamas stealing aid. You are working in service of Israel starving people. You are working in service of Israel, starving people, and Ethan brings you here. Wait.
But we can't do that if we're literally like two Jews, 100 opinion kind of jokes. So I strongly hope that there is a similar push by a multitude of pragmatic allies on the Jewish side to say, listen, we need to stop Hamas from seizing a lot of the aid and reselling it and making money off of it. But we can't do that if we're literally like stopping anything from going into Gaza for 2 months. People are clearly malnourished. We're seeing horrendous scenes. Israel's being turned into a pariah.
See, there it is. Israel's being turned into a pariah. He's more upset by that. Terrorism, as defined by the dictionary, the unlawful use of violence and intimidation, especially against civilians, in the pursuit of political aims. Yeah, I do believe that. You know, the US wanted to starve people in Afghanistan and use aid as a weapon of war. They're just as fucking bad as Israel.
As you
know, that's not true. The US is far worse than Israel because they are the key backers of Israel, and they also do this shit themselves.
Sanctioned by by France and UK and Canada and the Spanish Parliament just passed a thing like. Trump is like upset and saying, wrap it up. Like, this is not going well for us, guys. Like, yes, we want to, like, something's got to...
That's it! He's not saying... This guy is such an awful fuck. This guy is such an awful fuck. Like, what he just said there is, oh, guys, this all needs to change because Israel's having trouble. Israel's becoming a pariah state. He's literally not even upset. He's like, oh, yeah, we don't like the horrible scenes coming out of Gaza. He's not like, hey, this is really seriously evil. This is really indicative of a society that has gone really, really wrong. A society, well, I say gone wrong. No, it's actually gone right. This is always where it was moving towards. It is a settler colony that held no space for giving Palestinians the right to exist within their own homeland and live.
So there are ways in which our allies can support us. Support the mutually beneficial realignment towards the center, towards pragmatism, towards moderation. As, again, not kumbaya, let's hold hands, everything's going to be fine, but as a realistic framework to bring down the temperature and to navigate what seems like a complete mess.
It seems like right now we just need to find a way to end the war because everybody's just been...
We need to find a way to end the war. He doesn't even call it a genocide.
Pushed to the fringes,
He knows he doesn't call it a genocide because it might cause a bit of problem with hearing that the other guy's pro-Palestinian.
It's like
we end the war, but we make sure you don't end it in a way that Hamas is still in control because that's going to be a disaster for the people of Gaza. That's for another podcast. I will gladly come back and talk about different theories and works. In fact, I had like a 4-hour discussion with someone today on a workshop. So as I work at the Atlantic Council, where I am a resident senior fellow, but also I run Realign for Palestine through the Atlantic Council. And I have we have like our own standalone website, realignforpalestine.org. There is a donate button. And so like you're certainly folks can.
Yeah, I mean, I know Bad Empanada has covered this. You want me all to say it. This is pretty fucking perverse, especially after Ethan has been going, yeah, I think it's awesome that Noah's raised all this money because I could take that money from him and it just shows that I could do that. He didn't say like, oh, it's actually, for all of my animosity towards Noah, raising that much money for UNRWA is a good thing. But, like he doesn't.
Can donate there. But also, I would encourage folks to consider the World Food Program has a Gaza Appeals page that is dedicated just for, I'm going to give you the page, that is dedicated for sending food just for Gaza. And they are incredibly capable.
Oh, that's great. What is that?
Yes, I just dropped it.
So send us both links so we can put them in the description.
I sent this link. So this is the U.S., this is the fundraising arm of the World Food Program, but all money here donated at this link goes to the World Food Program for Gaza specifically. And they're basically one of the biggest feeders of Gaza right now at scale. And then I'm going to send you, so you can donate there if you want to feed Gazans, and I'll send you the Realign for Palestine website.
God, that's mad, sneaking yourself in alongside the World Food Program when you have literally just given the argument that, well, the Palestinians, they're like, the Palestinians, they're stealing the aid, and what is it actually? So this organization, he's literally just soliciting money for like his organization, so they can just keep posting things like this. Here's what college discourse can look like. It's mad. It's fucking mad.
I would love if people can explore. And as you navigate that website, there is there's an option to.
Can you Lean, can you donate 1,000 to each one of those orgs for us? And then I hope that other people will join in supporting your cause. And it's great to know that there's that.
1,000. He gives the same money to the fucking World Food Program as this guy, as he gives to Ahmed Fouad Alkhatib.
The World Food Program.
That's it. Yeah, that's really a good recommendation. Yeah,
I know those people for sure. They are like they are getting food into Gaza right now.
That's great.
Those trucks that you hear about.
Yeah.
That's all them.
Okay.
And that's what's
so there it is.
It's also, by the way, it's also an arm. It's also an arm of. It's also an arm of the United Nations, and here's what an part of the UN Special Committee says. It says Israel is conducting genocide, and this guy is. And specifically in the case of using starvation as a weapon of war. And they didn't talk about that. They didn't talk about Israel doing that, you know?
Encourage everyone to support. We're going to send some money to both of those orgs. And
thank you.
Thank you for calling and sharing your perspective. It's really, really nice to talk and to see you. And I've been in my...
It's really nice to talk to someone who says exactly what I believe.
For a while, I've been kind of seeing you here and there, so it's nice to connect and
I do see you liking and re-sharing things on Instagram, and I have long before this been following. I mean, some of your guys' videos have kept me going.
Maybe he really liked it when Ethan did blackface or said the N-word. And, like, look, you know what? Like, I used to find that kind of stuff funny, but the main thing was I was fucking, like, 12 and 13 and 14 and 15, you know? That's all I'm going to say.
Through COVID.
I was not a fucking 30-year-old man.
Wow, thank you. That's so nice. Oh, that's wonderful. Well, thank you. Let's remain in touch because I love getting your perspective on things, and I'm sure that there'll be no lack of need for it. So
absolutely, and thank you, and thanks for again.
I love people who shill for the U.S. government
and for hearing me out for the space and for supporting the World Food Program and Realign for Palestine. Really
there it is.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ahmed. We'll talk soon.
One charity feeds the Gaza Strip. One charity justifies it.
All right, have a great day. Thank you.
Have a great evening and a good weekend there. I appreciate it. There it is. That'd be Ahmed Fouad Alkhatib. And we're recommending the World Food Kitchen, which is really, I love knowing, like, what's the best way to go.
Yeah.
Which time Ethan said the N-word. Yeah, during COVID, it really kept him going.
The aid in there for the people. So that's a good recommendation. And also supporting his org. And that is... That's it. I mean, we've been going for a while. That was nice.
Very nice.
He really, I feel like people like that risk a lot.
What does he risk? He gets paid loads of money for it. You know, like he gets paid an obscene amount of money for it. Like, also, by the way, you are one of the key experts is Alex DeVille. He is he with the World Food Program? No, he's not, but he's a famine expert. Here he says, these carefully weighted words evoke the Genocide Convention, prohibits deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life. Here again, Israel has done its sums, tested its policies, and made clear. Just if you want to read something, this is in the LRB again, actually. Shout out LRB. Alex DeVille just talking about starvation in Gaza. Like, this guy's not, condemning Israel.